Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome in and welcome back. My name is Brooke, aka Brooks Moon, and I hope you're doing okay. No one asked for this video, but I'm doing it anyway because it's something that I'm incredibly passionate about and I really care about this show. There's so many things I could say about this show. A lot of them are conflicted, but I love this show. This is one of my favorite shows. I absolutely adored it. I didn't like how it ended, but we'll get to that when we get there. I'm gonna have my script on my phone just because there are 11 episodes in season 1 and we're going to be going episode by episode. I'm going to be breaking down the plot of this insane show that is absolutely ridiculous, but so much fun. And if you haven't watched it, don't worry, because I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know. Where do I even begin here? I guess the first place would be what the show is. So Sabrina exists in the universe of the Archie comics. She was a separate comic that existed within the Archie universe. It was called Sabrina the Teenage Witch. In the 90s, there was a movie called Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and it was very cozy, witchy type beat, because that's what the Archie comics were. They weren't like these super dark, mysterious things that Riverdale and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina made it into, but that's what this show was. This show is a very dark take on the characters from Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Like, when I say dark, I mean dark. Not supernatural, but not necessarily American Horror Story. It's kind of like in the middle of the two, I would say. That's what we're dealing with here. Which when I watched the show for the first time, I didn't know what to expect. I knew it was based off of the Archie comics. I knew that it existed in the same realm of Riverdale to a degree, but I truly didn't know what it was. And it came out around Halloween, I believe. So those were the vibes that I was going into with this show. What it became was not what I expected. And we're going to get into what the show is. We're going to go episode by episode, and I'm going to tell you what the fuck the show was about, because it's a lot. There's a lot of people on this board, okay? But we're starting with Sabrina Spellman. She is our main character. She is the narrator, kind of, sort of. She is the center of all of it. Sabrina is played by Kiernan Shipka, who I absolutely love and adore. This was like kind of her biggest thing that she had at the time, because she was in a few movies, but like nothing huge, and then she got the role of this show. So we open episode 1 with a voiceover from Sabrina. She gives us the essential background of who she is, why this story is being told, etc., etc. This show is taking place in a town called Greendale. She says that in Greendale it feels like Halloween every day. Like, that's kind of the vibe that's going on there. So if that doesn't set you up for what the show is going to be, I don't know what will. And Greendale is actually a neighboring city of Riverdale. There is a crossover at one point, but we will get to that when I get to the last season of the show, because it undoes a lot of stuff and appearances and things. So I have feelings on the Riverdale cameo that happens later on after the show is like finally over. So this is the story of Sabrina. She is half witch, half mortal, and she is about to turn 16, and her birthday is on Halloween, because what doesn't say witchy like having a birthday on Halloween? She has to make a decision on whether she wants to stay in the mortal world or the witch world. She can't have both. Her internal main conflict is her choosing between whether she wants to be a mortal or whether she wants to be a witch, but she exists in both. Her aunties that she lives with are witches. Her cousin is a witch. They're all witches. But she has a boyfriend named Harvey Kinkle, who is played by Ross Lynch, and she has two best friends, Roz and Susie. I'm calling Susie right now until we get later on into the season, and we'll get to the Theo stuff, but for the sake of this video, this is Susie. I'm not trying to dead name anyone. This is just how Susie's character is referred to in the first season, and later on with their name change, that's kind of like a whole plot point. So she basically has to choose between her friends or her family. That's essentially the main conflict that's going on in this first season. After we get Sabrina's like exposition, essentially, we start with Sabrina, Harvey, Roz, and Susie at a zombie movie, and they're seeing the movie together. They then exit the movie theater, and then they run into their teacher, Mrs. Wardwell. Yes, there are two here. We'll get to that in a second. Sabrina invites her to go eat with them at the diner after the movie, which is like weird. What? Susie, Roz, and Harvey all look at her like, what is wrong with you? It's like, like valid, because who does that? No one. But Sabrina's reasoning is that she feels bad because Mrs. Wardwell lives alone. Girl, that's not your problem. She's a full-grown woman. That is not your responsibility whatsoever. We then cut to Mrs. Wardwell. She's driving home from the movies. She's by herself. She's on a very, very dark road. And then there's a woman. We don't see the girl right away, but she does ask Mrs. Wardwell for help. And Mrs. Wardwell lets her in the car. Don't pick up strangers off of the side of the road. I think that that's just like goes without saying. We go back to Sabrina and her friends at the diner. This is a diner that's very popular in Greendale. It's a diner, bookstore, coffee shop, all in one, and it's owned by Mr. C. We'll get more of Mr. C later, but he owns this coffee bookshop diner. If the Archieverse don't have nothing, it definitely has like a diner setting that the characters can go to, because it's like that in Riverdale too, like with Pops. Diner itself is a character and plays like a major role in a lot of stuff later on. So that's where they are. Every single time they go see a movie, they go to this diner and get milkshakes and they talk about the film. Susie is the one kind of like leading the charge in the conversation. It's like, it's a very high schoolers talking about film conversation that you hear probably all the time. It's here that we see that Sabrina and Harvey are like this really cute couple. They don't give a shit about PDA or the fact that they're in the presence of their friends. It's like, aw, puppy love relationship. Like they're in love. They love each other. Harvey then walks her home. They have a really cute moment. He gives her a necklace and says that he loves her for the first time. Oh, isn't that so cute? She returns the sentiment. She also says she loves him too. She doesn't just like leave him hanging, and then she says goodnight and she goes into her house. It's a cute little moment. There's like this moment of her like dancing back to her room because she's a teenager in love. It's giving Spider-Man Tobey Maguire coming out of the building and then doing the dance, but worse. It's cute and silly, and it's like, oh, this is a cute little show about a girl who has to make a decision. No, it's not cute and fluffy. Like that's the vibe they're giving you with her relationship with Harvey. Man, does that take a dark turn as we keep going in this season. Relationship goes from like this cutesy high school thing to like death magic, but we'll get there. Back to Wardwell. We're back with Miss Wardwell. Okay, with this girl. This girl is being very weird. She's very creepy, not giving off good vibes whatsoever. Well, she's trying to get information from this girl. The girl is not really saying anything, and then she says that the woods attacked her. That is her phrase. She's like, the woods attacked me, because she's like all scratched up. She looks rough. Wardwell goes on this whole entire like tangent about the witch hunt that happened in Greendale. That's like, everybody knows about the Salem witch trials, but no one knows about the witch trials in Greendale, on how there's the Greendale 13. Remember this will come up later. The witches were hung in the woods and their spirits haunt the woods to this day. The girl asks her why she knows so much about this, and Wardwell's like, I'm the unofficial historian of Greendale. It's like, girl, what are you you work at the school. Like, the girl asks if Sabrina is one of her students, and Wardwell's like, yeah, do you know her? Like, are you guys friends? Like, the girl says no, then turns into a demon and attacks Mrs. Wardwell, and she stabs a pair of scissors in Wardwell's neck and kills her. She then casts a spell and takes over Wardwell's body and claims she will deliver Sabrina to the Dark Lord, who we can only assume is Satan himself. It's not stated outright that it's the devil, but it is. We also, in this moment, learned that Sabrina's dad broke witch code by marrying a mortal, and like it was like a whole thing. Like, it's a whole controversial problem. So Wardwell is dead. She's no longer Wardwell. She's gone. It's over. Wardwell is gone. New Wardwell, hotter Wardwell, no glasses, hotter Wardwell is now who exists. Lonely, sad Mrs. Wardwell does not anymore. She puts on lipstick and she's a different person. This is within the first 10 minutes of the season. If you like saw the relationship between Sabrina and Harvey, you're like, oh, this is gonna be like a cute teenage show. No, you just watched a woman die. You just watched a woman get murdered and then possessed. Sabrina wakes up in the middle of the night. We're back to Sabrina. We're back here. We're back with Sabrina. Kills a bat that flies into her room, breaks through the window, flies into her room, and she kills it. We see a shot of the calendar, and we see that it is October 28th, and in a few days is her Sweet 16 and also dark baptism. What is a dark baptism, you may ask? We are going to find out very quickly. So she wakes up and she goes downstairs, and this is where we meet her Aunt Zelda and Aunt Hilda, and her cousin Ambrose. So this is Sabrina's witch family. Her cousin Ambrose, Aunt Hilda, and Aunt Zelda, or Auntie Z, as she calls her. We find out Ambrose is a warlock. He's also like witch, but he knows necromancy. He says that. Like, we learn that very quickly. Her aunties bombard her with dark baptism duties. So Aunt Zelda is the one that's like kind of pushing the whole thing because she wants Sabrina to go through with the dark baptism. What she needs to do, even though Sabrina is conflicted about being away from her mortal friends and all of that. So her Aunt Z tells her that she needs to cleanse her body with a concoction by drinking it, and Ambrose advises her not to take it. And then she's also told she needs to choose a familiar before the ceremony, and she says she's going to cast a spell instead to see if any familiars volunteer, because that is an option. Like, you can pick one, or you can just be like, come to me. And they do. And her familiar is named Salem, what I named my cat after. We learned that both of her parents are dead. Sabrina's an orphan, and that is why she lives with her aunt and her cousin. It's obvious she needs to make a decision. Like I said, like, it's the one thing that's bothering her. It's like, it's breaking apart her soul. She doesn't know what to do. She's so conflicted. And this like pretty much is setting up the entirety of the season, and just kind of like the show as in general, about her battling between being a witch, like balancing being a witch and being immortal. Sabrina's in the woods, and this is where we meet Prudence, Dorcas, and Agatha. They're also referred to as the Weird Sisters. They sneak up on Sabrina, and they're basically like set up to be the mean girls of the show. They refer to her as a half-breed, so blood races exist in all forms of magic, apparently. What is with the obsession? They insinuate that her parents didn't die on accident. These are Sabrina's parents, Diana and Edward. These are her parents. Her mom was immortal. Her dad was a witch. Sabrina was told that her parents died in a plane crash, but the Weird Sisters insinuate that it wasn't an accident. It was on purpose. We actually don't get the answer to this question until later on in the show, not even in season 1. And then they curse her. They give her a blood curse and vanish. And this is the first time we see them. Sabrina was on her way to her mortal high school. We see that Susie is being bullied by 2 football players. These 2 jocks. Okay, they play a semi-important role in this season. Sabrina's pissed. She's like, what the fuck? Like, why would they do this to Susie? They know to leave her alone. And Principal Hawthorne is not on here because I forgot to put him on here, even though he pops up a lot in this season. Please ignore the fact that I forgot to put him on here. He isn't helpful at all. And Sabrina refers to it as a witch hunt, as a Susie that like, which is like ironic. Miss Wardwell shows up again, and now she's yassified. She looks like this Wardwell. This Wardwell's dead. New Wardwell is here. Wardwell can't come to the phone right now. Why? Because she's dead. But Sabrina's so upset with the way that Hawthorne has been dealing with the situation with Susie and the football players and like the jocks and stuff and the bullying that's been going on. Because Susie is queer. I like, it's very important to know that Susie is queer, and a plot line for Susie's character later on in the show, so I'm not going to give too much away. Miss Wardwell gives Sabrina the idea to get revenge on Principal Hawthorne, and Sabrina gets an idea on how to get rid of him. And so we then learn that Miss Wardwell is not actually Miss Wardwell. She was someone sent by Satan, the Dark Lord, to make sure that Sabrina goes through with her dark baptism. That is her purpose. That is her goal for this season, is to make sure that Sabrina goes through with her dark baptism and leaves her mortal life behind. This is important because Wardwell gets involved in a lot of shit to fuck up Sabrina's life. So Sabrina and Harvey are walking home from school, and she drops a bomb on Harvey that she is going to a boarding school in Connecticut after her 16th birthday, which is only a few days away. He doesn't understand what the hell she's talking about because this is literally the first time she has mentioned it. Like, she has never brought up the fact that she would be going to a boarding school after she turned 16. And she doesn't feel like hiding anything from him, so she just tells him outright that she is a witch and she has to undergo this thing called a dark baptism. He doesn't understand because, man, she's like, I'm half witch and half mortal, and he calls her crazy. He flips out, essentially, because how would you cope with dealing with the fact that your girlfriend is telling you that she has to disappear to Connecticut, and then that she's half witch, half mortal, and has to take part in a dark bath? I wouldn't know what to think either. I think his brain just kind of melted a little bit in his head. She casts a spell on him and makes him forget everything that just happened. And he's confused, and he's like, how did we get here? We were just at school. And she's like, you weren't feeling good. And I like, the lie is not believable, but he believes it because he can't remember what just happened. She goes home and then confides in Ambrose on how to cast a spell to get rid of Principal Hawthorne. She says she doesn't want to kill him, but she wants to scare him really bad, which is like, oh, okay, Sabrina has some morals, I guess. And Ambrose asks if she's sure, and she insists that she is. They cast a spell, so a bunch of spiders appear in his house and freak him out so bad that he does not turn up to school the next day and says that he's sick. Sabrina falls asleep in the bath, and then she wakes up in a dream in the woods. It scares her. Then after she wakes up, her familiar shows up. He is a black cat named Salem. He looks exactly like my cat. They're twins. She then the next day asks if she can postpone her dark baptism because she doesn't want to leave her mortal life behind. And Zelda tells her it was what her parents wished for her to do. They want her to be part of the coven. Ambrose tells her to get a malum malice. It's an apple that will grant her knowledge and secrets, but it could also show her a glimpse of the future. So if she takes a bite out of it, she'll know what to do. She's looking at the malum malice as a way to find answers on if she should or should not go through with her dark baptism and join the coven. But like, girl, you really don't have a choice. You have magic regardless of if you do the dark baptism or not. Aunties run the funeral home in Greendale. I didn't mention that before. Ambrose also works for them. He does a lot of the embalming of the bodies. He also is permanently bound to the house. He did some whack shit years and years ago and tried to blow up the Vatican, and so because he wouldn't give up any of his co-conspirators, he was then basically put on infinite house arrest. He can't leave their property, so he does a lot of work with the funeral home. While he is embalming someone, he finds a witch's mark, which means that there is a witch hunter in town. Remember this is going to come up later. So Sabrina goes to go get the malum malice at a very specific tree, which is the hanging tree where the Greendale 13, those witches that original Wardwell was telling Demon Wardwell before she was Demon Wardwell about that they were hung. That's where the malum malice is. It's at that hanging tree. And so she goes to go get the apple. She is attacked by a scarecrow, which is the work of Demon Mrs. Wardwell. Salem appears out of nowhere and attacks the thing and kills it, then goes and gets the malum malice. She bites into it, and then she is transformed into the past, and she sees the witches hanging from the witch's tree, and the tree is also on fire. Satan then emerges from the tree and comes towards her, and then she spits out the piece of apple that she just bit into, and then she's back to reality. She goes back home, and we learn that there is a visitor at their house, and it is Father Blackwood, who is the high priest of their coven, and he is here to convince Sabrina to sign her name into the Book of the Beast and go through with her dark baptism, which was probably of Zelda's doing to invite him over to convince her. That is the end of episode 1. Episode 2, we are opening up with Father Blackwood explaining to Sabrina what the dark baptism is and what it would consist of. Sabrina then asks if she's giving up her soul and has to do Satan's bidding, essentially. Father Blackwood says no, it's more like a symbolic gesture, and that the signature is a pledge to the Dark Lord, but not necessarily something where you're like giving up part of your soul. He explains that the Dark Lord isn't evil because he believes in free will, which is a real sentiment that exists within Satanism. They value free will and like love and peace and existing. Like, Satanism is not as evil and twisted as most people try to make it out to be, from my understanding. She asks why she has to leave her mortal life behind, and he explains that when she's a full witch, mortals will age faster than she does because witches don't age as fast. So when she becomes a full witch, she's not going to age as fast, and all of her mortal friends will age a lot faster than she will, but she will still look 16 when they're like 47. He also tells her that the malum malice isn't accurate. Whatever she saw, it was probably not true. It's probably not real. It's just something that is like presented to her. He advises her to go through with the dark baptism and go to the academy. He also tells her that she can leave at any point if she wants to, which Sabrina didn't think was an option, because it's not an option, but he tells her that to make her go through with it. While Father Blackwood is there, Ambrose explains the witch's mark to him and tells him what he found. Turns out that the witch's mark that Ambrose found was on a witch who was raised by mortals, and he has the witch's mark because he never went through with his dark baptism because he was raised by mortals. Blackwood like completely shuts down the possibility of there being a witch hunter in Greendale. That whole plot point of there being a witch hunter in Greendale is gone. They gave you false danger in the first episode and then it's immediately squashed. We learn about Connor. Connor is dead. He has a witch's mark. Ambrose thought it was a witch hunter. It's not a witch hunter. Just turns out that Connor was a warlock, never went through with his dark baptism, and was raised by mortals. Okay. It's the day before Sabrina's birthday, and Harvey comes over and he asks her aunties if they could celebrate the day before, because Sabrina has been telling him that she has something to do on her actual birthday that she can't get out of. It's family stuff, because now she's lying to him, because when she told him the truth, he tried to gaslight her. Remember that? But he also thinks that she's like leaving, so he wants to know if it's possible that they can celebrate after. And he also invites her aunts to come, which is just like really considerate and nice. We're ignoring the fact that he gaslit Sabrina before, but it's fine. So I forgot to mention this. Sabrina, Roz, and Susie are forming a club called Wicca. It has to do with women in power and all of that. It's sponsored by Mrs. Wardwell. That is not Mrs. Wardwell. She gave them the idea for the club. And the jocks who were bullying Susie are ripping Wicca posters down. Susie sees them, yells at them. They then punch her in the face. The first time Susie got attacked, she wouldn't give Sabrina the names of the jocks. After Susie got punched in the face, she gives Sabrina the names of the jocks. Sabrina then goes to Wardwell because Principal Hawthorne is still not back at the school because he was traumatized by spiders. Wardwell tells her to raise hell against them. Girl, I know you're not really a teacher, but you're a teacher in a school. You can't be telling your students to raise hell against other students. And so Sabrina's like, I know what I can do. And she consults the Weird Sisters. She gets them involved. She knows that they like to bully mortal boys and like torment them. They agree to help her as long as Sabrina does not attend the academy. So she lies to them and is like, yeah, I'm not going. I'm staying in the mortal world. I'm actually not doing my dark baptism. I'm not going to the academy. Lies to them just so they will help her torment mortal boys. We go to Zelda and Hilda. Zelda kills Hilda and buries her in their yard because Hilda was annoying her. There's a plot of land that they have in their graveyard that allows people to be resurrected, and so Zelda buries her in there and Hilda comes back. Ambrose is stuck on trying to figure out what the hell happened to Connor, and so his adopted parents come by. This is them. You can barely see it because of the glare. His adopted parents come by to deal with like the funeral arrangements and all of that. So Ambrose is talking to them, trying to figure out what happened to Connor, like what Connor was like, if he did anything strange. And they said that he was always talking to his iguana, his pet iguana, which turns out that the iguana was his familiar. Bro was like not fully aware of the fact that he was a witch because he wasn't raised by witches, he was raised by mortals. And we go back to Sabrina and the Weird Sisters, and they bring the boys to the mines because Greendale is a mine town, a mining town. Harvey's dad runs the mines. Harvey also has a brother named Tommy who works in the mines. Harvey doesn't like the mines because when he was little, he was traumatized. They ask them where they go, like when they want to like hang out and party and stuff, and they're like, we go to Riverdale. That's the first time Riverdale is brought up. It's brought up another time. They start to think it's weird that they're like leading them into the mines of the town because yeah, that's strange. But they go along with it. They're like, it's fine. It's a scene where they're like, the girls are making out with the guys, and it actually turns out that the guys are actually making out with each other because they charmed them to make it look like they were kissing them, but it turns out they were just kissing each other, and because gay bad, they freak out. It goes completely black in the mines, and Prudence crosses the line and like continues to push it, and they end up running out of the mines in their boxers, scared to death. Left over after they run out are 4 birds that Prudence says that are their boyhoods that are gone, and so they then trap the birds in a cage. They admit that they knew that Sabrina was lying about going to the academy, but they helped her anyway because they wanted to torment mortal boys. They then explain to Sabrina that she's trading freedom for power, and Sabrina's like, well, I want both. But girl, you can't have both. It's like the whole argument. Hilda comes back from the dead, and Zelda alludes that it won't be the last time, and it wasn't the first time either that she's done that to her, which is crazy. She says that she did it because she knows what Hilda said to Sabrina about the dark baptism, and like that she doesn't necessarily need to go through with it, and Sabrina then hears this conversation that they're having. It's then Halloween. It's Halloween. It's also Sabrina's birthday. Happy birthday, Sabrina. She's 16. And it's also that night that her dark baptism is supposed to happen. Hilda gives Sabrina her mom's wedding dress to wear that night because she doesn't have a costume, so she wears a wedding dress. Makes sense. I mean, go as a bride, I guess, for Halloween. Her aunts then tell her that she isn't allowed to go to school, and Ambrose is in charge of watching her, basically babysitting her all day. And they called the school to tell them that she was sick, even though Sabrina was like like, you didn't have to do that. Why did you do that? I didn't want you to. Ambrose says she's not allowed to have meaningful connections to mortals after her dark baptism. And of course, Sabrina is so upset by this. She wants to be able to keep her friends and her boyfriend, and that she'll want to forget them eventually because they're gonna die, because she's gonna age slower than they do regardless. And that the coven actually forbids that connection to exist at all. And of course, Sabrina can't take no for an answer. Hilda and Zelda then leave the house to go get a goat for the dark baptism. It's exactly what you think it's for. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Sabrina then goes to Roz's Halloween party that evening with Harvey to have a last night with her friends. Her aunties aren't necessarily aware of the fact that she's doing that because they have to go search high and low for a goat. Ambrose tells her not to be late and to leave before her aunts return and eat Harvey. Blood moon then starts to eclipse. It's a blood moon on Halloween, the night of her dark baptism, because of course it is. Sabrina needs to run home for the baptism. She then crosses the threshold in the wedding dress, and it's white, and then after she crosses the threshold it turns black because witches can't wear white apparently. Baptism is in full swing. The entire coven is there, the Weird Sisters are there, Blackwood is there, there's a podium with the Book of the Beast on it is what it's called. She's marked with blood on her forehead like Simba from The Lion King, and then has to make the promise to the coven and the Dark Lord. Sabrina goes to sign her name in the book with her own blood because that's how they do it. And as her hand is cut with the knife by Blackwood, she sees the dead witches again, and she's like, oh my god, Blackwood actually lied to me. I don't have free will. I'm never gonna have free will if I give up my freedom to join the coven. She sees her dead parents appear to her in the woods and tell her to run, so she does. The forest and the coven try to stop her. They're all like chasing after her, trying to go after her, and she runs home to Ambrose for help, who looks just as panicked and freaked out as she is. She refuses to sign again and tells Father Blackwood, like, I'm not signing your book, you can basically shove it and kick rocks. Ambrose places a charm on the house so no non-Spellman witches can cross. He doesn't actually do this, but he says that he's doing it, but he says he's now gonna have to start one, because if they realize that they can cross over, then Sabrina's kind of screwed. Miss Wardwell goes to go visit the Dark Lord because she failed her mission of getting Sabrina to go through with her dark baptism, and he shows her mercy, but she promises not to fumble again, that she's going to make Sabrina sign the Book of the Beast. Then cut to the following Monday. Zelda is giving Sabrina the cold shoulder because Zelda wants to uphold the coven's values. That's like her whole thing. She's like, we are witches, like we need to give ourselves to the Dark Lord. She's very like traditional religion, that kind of vibe, but with the devil and they're witches and a coven, rather than it being like Christianity. They refer to like Christianity, they refer to mortals and their false god. That's what they say in the show, like verbatim. And Zelda says that she's embarrassed by Sabrina for refusing to go through with her dark baptism, and Sabrina pushes back. She says that she doesn't think it's what her parents actually would have wanted, and she tells them about the vision of her parents. And then she says that she isn't choosing a path, she kind of chooses both. She's not choosing one, she's choosing both, and that she doesn't just have one coven, she has two, and one coven is made up of witches and one coven is made up of mortals. And like, girl, we're back to where we were at the beginning. You still have to make a decision. But no, she's stubborn as all hell and refuses to give up anything. Sabrina always has to get her way. All the time she pushes the limits in the show, and it never stops. Wardwell is keeping a close eye on Sabrina at school, and then Hawthorne calls Sabrina into his office and is like pissed off about the Wicca Club and is telling her that he's going to like take it down and like ban them from meeting and all of that. And then he's possessed by the Dark Lord himself, and he tells her that she has to sign the Book of the Beast. Through Hawthorne, the Dark Lord is speaking, saying, hey, you need to sign my book, you need to give me your free will, whatever. She tells him no to his face, and he says,
she is of mortal flesh and all mortals die.
So basically threatening her life. And that is the end of episode 2. Episode 3, Sabrina can still hear the Dark Lord, even though she is not like speaking to him directly, and she gets sick because it's Satan and he's trying to punish her. Wardwell appears. Sabrina keeps having flashbacks to Satan possessing her principal because, you know, hashtag trauma. Back on the Connor plot point. There's so much going on in the show at all given times. Like, I was going to do 2 seasons per video, and then I watched season 1 and I was like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to fit 2 seasons in this one video. That's not gonna be possible. Connor's familiar turns up on his casket during his funeral, and Ambrose is trying to get it to talk to find out how Connor died. Zelda volunteers to kill it. She's like, is it bothering you? I'll murder this familiar, which is like a crime apparently. We later find out it's a crime to murder a witch's familiar, dead or not, but Zelda's like, I'll murder the thing. He's dead. It doesn't matter. And like Ambrose is like, no, I will take care of it. We're back at Mortal School. Roz is mad because her book assignment for the Bluest Eye is rejected for being a controversial book, which is unfortunately like a topical thing right now. Hawthorne, of course, is like, no, I'm not letting you read that book because racism. She says that it's a real life argument because it exists in the real world, and that the Bluest Eye has been banned in schools before because fascism. And then the librarian basically tells them that there's been a soft purge on banned books, that they get checked out and never returned. But Hawthorne is like, we don't ban books at Baxter High. We don't ban books here. And then the librarian is like, yeah, they go missing and then never turn back up. Okay, you can call it what you want, but that's banning books. Sabrina then goes home and she finds out that she has been given an infernal summons for not signing the Book of the Beast and running from her baptism, and so she's going to have to go on trial in front of the coven. She's summoned by the Court of Witches and is being sued by the Dark Lord. Imagine you don't want to give up part of your life, okay? And then you're like, actually, I'm not going to go through with this thing that will make me give up part of my life. And then the other person sues you, but that other person is also the devil himself. She then tells Zelda that she saw Satan and demands that she not be going on trial and join the coven. Zelda says she has to because both her aunts are also going to be on trial in addition to her. It's like a whole family thing because they're her legal guardians and they're also witches. Witch law is also apparently guilty until proven innocent. So it's not innocent until proven guilty. You have to prove your innocence. Everything's like the reverse of mortals, pretty much. Before the trial, both Zelda and Hilda are stripped of their magical powers until the trial, and then they will then be given their magic back or not. And because they don't have their magic anymore, they start to age rapidly. Ambrose tells Sabrina about this mortal named Daniel Webster, who was a mortal cult lawyer. This is Daniel Webster. Naturally, Sabrina goes and finds him and asks for his help. Zelda tries to get Faustus Blackwood, Father Blackwood, his first name is Faustus, I didn't say that before. Zelda then tries to go get him to rescind the trial so they aren't embarrassed by the coven, and there's a lot of weird romantic sexual tension between them that I hate. I hate their relationship. He tells her Sabrina needs to admit to doing the wrong thing, which, funny you say that. She will never do that. That is the last thing Sabrina will do, is admit she's wrong. That's what is the downfall of a lot of her character growth in the show, and most of the shit that happens in the show is her fault. Wardwell then appears and explains that Sabrina is her charge because the Dark Lord sent her there to make sure Sabrina went through with her dark baptism. Wardwell blames Father Blackwood for being too weak to get Sabrina to sign the Book of the Beast. Tells him not to underestimate her. She low-key threatens him and says she'll eat him even though he is the high priest of the coven. She doesn't care. She will eat him because he's a man. The feminism that exists in the show is just man-hating. That's not feminism, that's just you hating men. And it's supposed to be female empowerment, but it just is coming off as all men suck, which they do to a degree, but it's also they're not forgiving towards men. But the men in the show also suck. Father Blackwood is awful. He's not good. So it's hard for me to feel bad for him when she's threatening his life because he also sucks. That's it's a weird slippery slope of a situation that I don't like. Sabrina goes to Webster to get help against the devil, and he recognizes her last name from her parents. Says that he doesn't practice anymore after she explains what happened to her and the situation that she's in. And after Sabrina leaves, we kind of see a nod to his traumatic past. There's a picture of a girl on his wall and he kind of looks at it all sad. We then go to Harvey's home life. He says that he got a job at the comic book shop. His dad tells him, no, you can't go work at the comic book shop. You're going to go work at the mines like a man and not be an artist. And Tommy, Harvey's older brother, tries to stand up for him, and it just like doesn't work. It's now trial time, and Sabrina is presented in front of the Infernal Three, who look like 3 people who were left in the pool and never taken out. Blackwood then says that when Sabrina is found guilty, she will die and then burn in a pit for 333 years. Which is like, okay. After Faustus says this, Mr. Webster appears out of nowhere. He bursts into the church and he's like, my client is not guilty. Zelda is not happy for him showing up because of the connection he had to her brother, which is Sabrina's dad, who died. It's revealed that Sabrina's dad is actually the one who taught Webster witch law and made him into the mortal cult lawyer. Faustus keeps digging into Sabrina and saying that she was courting with the devil because she showed up in a wedding dress, and Hilda's like, no, it's her mom's wedding dress she was wearing as a Halloween costume. And it's revealed that Sabrina's name was written in the Book of the Beast 3 days after she was born, but she didn't write it, obviously, because newborns can't write. So it's then revealed that Sabrina's name was written in the Book of the Beast by her father, and Zelda went with him to be a witness with baby Sabrina in tow, and says that her soul was promised to the Dark Lord, so she has to go through with her dark baptism. After the trial, Sabrina and Zelda fight, obviously, because Sabrina feels betrayed. She claims that her dark baptism was a cover-up, and that she compares herself to a used car, which is just so random. It's a very weird analogy. She then also feels betrayed by her father's choice because her father made the choice for her when she was literally 3 days old. Turns out that Sabrina's soul and name in the book was in exchange to have permission for her dad to marry her mortal mom. So it was against witch law. We get more of Webster's backstory as we go. Sabrina goes back to go see him. We learn that the girl that he was looking at very sad was his daughter, and that she's actually a ghost and is haunting him, and she was actually murdered. Her throat was slit, so her ghost form has a slit throat and blood all over her. Really, it was just Wardwell intimidating him to get him to drop the case with Sabrina. We go back to Harvey. He explains that he doesn't hate the mines, but when he was little, he got lost playing hide and seek, and he saw the devil himself, and it scared him half to death. He was stuck down there for 5 hours and can never make himself go back into the mines. Why you would play hide and seek in the mines of your town, I don't know. We go back to school with the banned book plotline with Roz and Wicca. They are handing out banned book lists in a revolt against the ban. Hawthorne appears and says that he contacted the PTA and the school board, and they're reviewing the claims against the book. Ambrose is hosting Connor's funeral at their house. Their house is a funeral parlor, essentially, and in addition to being their home. Connor's parents show up, and then this man named Luke appears. He is one of Connor's ex-boyfriends. He alludes to the fact of knowing that Connor was a witch. And Ambrose, for whatever fucking reason, while being at a funeral, shoots his shot, asks Luke out. And they're like flirting. I'm like, you're literally hosting a funeral. What are you doing? We're then back at school with Sabrina. Sabrina's in the middle of class. Wardwell casts a spell on her that makes her see Webster's dead daughter, that follows her into the library, where she sees a bunch of articles and about all of the horrible people he got set free. Insinuated that he let the man who murdered his daughter free, which is why his daughter was murdered, because the person that he was representing then went on to kill his daughter. Sabrina visits him and fires him, and he explains that he signed a deal with the devil to be the best lawyer ever. However, the catch would be that he only got the cases for the worst people. So like he was representing like actual murderers and serial killers and horrible individuals, but he would win every case. But he thinks he can save Sabrina because of the deal that he made. So he's like, if I take your case, you're going to win. Obviously, like using the devil's bargain against the devil who's suing Sabrina. The trial resumes. Okay, we're back. We're back in the church for the witch trial. Her aunts then confirm that Sabrina was born to a mortal woman and that she is only half witch. Webster argues that because she is only half witch, that she is entitled to half of the court being witches and half of the court being mortals. Justice says that there are two options. She can be dropped in water to see if she's half witch or not, or stripped before the court to find the witch's mark to prove that she was born to a mortal. He then returns to say that he spoke to the devil for a plea deal and that she can see her mortal friends once a year and enroll in the Witches' Academy. She's told not to take it because the Dark Lord doesn't do plea deals. That's how Webster got into the situation that he's in. Luke arrives again to the house. He tells Ambrose that he's a warlock, and the two of them have sex. They hook up. Lizard is then dead the next morning after Connor's funeral. So, like, because the lizard now knows that Connor is actually dead, and so it also dies. Sabrina asks Harvey to find her birthmark. It's her witch's mark. Well, they're in the woods. She strips down naked in the woods and asks him to find a mark for her. I don't know what she's doing. And also, Harvey is a man, okay? He's a boy, but he's super respectful, which, like, to me, the whole, like, him being so respectful and then he's like, but he gaslit her at the beginning of the show still makes no sense to me. He also is like, well, I have to even the playing field, and he also takes off his clothes. So intimate, but, like, I can't get over the fact that they're literally in the woods in November. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's cold outside. Put your clothes back on. Roz then trauma dumps on her friends later and tells them that she's expected to go completely blind in 3 months or less because of her mycic atropathy. And the reason she cared about the books is because she thought about how many books she could read before it was too late and she lost her eyesight. That's why she cared so much about not being able to read the book The Bluest Eye for school. Harvey and Tommy go to the mines to work, and Harvey has a panic attack. Tommy is super supportive and tells him to go home while he works. His dad gets home and is pissed Harvey didn't show up for work, and Tommy stands up for him again. We're back at court. Sabrina didn't find the mark via Harvey, so she says she's not taking the deal and will submit to the exam in front of the coven. If they don't find it, she will have to be retried in human court. Sabrina also demands that her aunt's powers and youth are restored to them because they're literally becoming decrepit as the trial continues because they don't have their magic. Hilda barges in to court before Sabrina's exam with a baby book of Sabrina's. She has a certificate of Sabrina being baptized in the church by her mother, and Hilda was a witness. It was done the day before her father put her name in the Book of the Beast. Because of this, and because Sabrina was baptized by the false god, the trial is voided and Faustus is pissed off. Sabrina calls out the Dark Lord for his behavior and fire stairs appear. Sabrina is then allowed to, they come back up after they met with the Dark Lord apparently, which Webster being chill about that tells you enough, I think. Is allowed to retain her mortal life, but has to split her time between the Academy of the Dark Arts and attend Black Mass. So she has dual citizenship between the witch world and the mortal world because of the conflict of contracts, they say, because she was baptized in the false god church, but also her name is in the Book of the Beast. So because both happened, it's a conflict of interest. Her then tells her to take advantage of the fact that she can exist in both worlds and learn as much as she can in both the mortal and the witch world to fight for what's hers, whatever that means. We'll learn later on in the show. Hilda is then excommunicated from the church because she helped take part in a baptism with the false god. Zelda's basically like, you deserved it. Wardwell then says she has a half victory but they need to completely sever the ties that Sabrina has with the mortal world, and she plans on doing that starting with Roz. Because Sabrina isn't fully a witch yet, Wardwell is basically like, well, the only way that I can get her to not be part of the mortal world anymore is to get rid of her ties to the mortal world, which is Harvey, Roz, and Susie. That is the end of episode 3. When I tell you so much happens in the show, I mean so much happens in the show. Start of episode 4, Sabrina tells her friends that she's going to a farm expo that's coming into Greendale for whatever reason to cover up the fact that she has to go to the Academy of Unseen Arts, which is like the witches' school, for her induction. She's gonna be gone for 3 days, and And it turns out that Susie's dad is also going to this farm expo, because apparently that's a thing that happens in Greendale, is you just like go to a farm expo whenever they come in town. I don't even know what a farm expo is. Is it just a farmer's market? Like, what does that mean? What the fuck is a farm expo? So she heads to the academy, and she says that the only reason she's going is because she wants to learn how to beat the devil and get rid of him. I don't see that being a possibility, considering the fact that like you are part of a coven that basically worships him like mortals do with God in Christianity. So sure, okay, yeah, you can definitely 100% do that, no problem. So when she gets to the academy, she is greeted by a small child named Quentin, who has like the worst bowl cut I've ever seen in my life. He comes and brings her to Father Blackwood's office, where she is given her school schedule. And when she's given her school schedule, she's like disappointed at the fact that she is in these classes that aren't as advanced. And it's like, girl, this is your first day at this witches academy. Why are you upset that you have to take witching 101? It's like going into medical school and like expecting to be able to just like perform brain surgery on the first day. Like, that's just not how that works. Why she's disappointed with her schedule, I don't know. But she goes to choir, which is like a normal class at witches school, I guess, and sings her heart out and proves that she can sing. So we now know that Sabrina is musically inclined. Unfortunately, this will come back later in a way that you're probably thinking it does. It does. The choir class is taught by Father Blackwood's wife, Lady Blackwood. Can't remember her first name because I'm really bad at writing things down. And this is actually the first time we see Nicholas. We meet Nicholas Scratch. This is the first time we see him. He will pop up again in a second. After choir practice, she goes to lunch. Nicholas sits down with her and introduces himself as Nicholas Scratch. He tells Sabrina that he's been reading her father's journals that they have in the library. He is studying all of the subjects that Sabrina wants to study, which is conjuring, demonology, ritual magic, and necromancy. Prudence and the Weird Sisters show up, of course, because all they exist for at this point in the show is to torment Sabrina and nothing else. So they show up and sit down and immediately start taking shots at her and say that she has the Spellman kink because she is dating a mortal. She's half mortal and she's been going to mortal school pretty much her whole life. Like, yeah, that's like a normal thing that's going to happen. I don't know what she expected out of that, but okay. Nick defends her. Their relationship in this season makes me incredibly uncomfortable and I hate it. Nick defends her and calls Prudence a bitch, and Prudence responds by calling him a warlock slut, which is, I think, the funniest insult you could probably ever call a man, which I might use moving forward in my own life, even though they're just like normal men. Like, I'm gonna call you a warlock slut to your face and you can't do anything about it because it's so funny. Go back to Roz and Susie in the mortal world. Like I said, Susie's dad also went to the farmer expo, whatever that may be, and Susie is having to watch over their Uncle Jesse, who is apparently super sick. Susie explains to Roz that he had some accident in the mines and like basically went crazy, and so since then he's been like super ill, and Susie's dad is trying to like send Jesse off to some like institution pretty much because he can't take care of him. Roz agrees to stay with Susie for the weekend to watch over Jesse so Susie isn't home by themselves with Uncle Jesse, who allegedly saw a monster and then went crazy. We are back at the Academy of the Unseen Arts. Quentin appears in the middle of the night by Sabrina's bed, and this does not alarm her in a normal fashion, which I guess it can't, considering that she is a witch, and seeing a child with a horrific bowl cut in the middle of the night is not as scary as it should be, just because of the other shit that she's had to deal with on her day-to-day basis, and tells her not to show her fear or she'll be killed on the spot, which is like so weird. And then Sabrina wakes up again, and she's actually in a witch's cell for what is called the harrowing experience that happens to all newcomers at the Academy of the Unseen Arts. She is basically locked in the cell and has to experience the same thing that the Greendale 13 experienced without sunlight, food, or water for the night. And the second that she is left in there, the witches apparently still haunt the cell. So as soon as she's locked in there by the Weird Sisters, by the way, they're the ones who lock her in there, she starts hearing all of these like horrible things in the dark. She screams really, really loud, and then Salem appears because he's her familiar, so he exists to protect her and helps her through the night, which the reason why she gets through the night in the first place. The next morning, she's let out of the cell by the Weird Sisters, and then she goes and calls Harvey. What's happening with this harrowing is that the Weird Sisters are just hazing Sabrina in a witch way. She's then summoned to Faustus's office. Zelda is there. Her Aunt Zelda's there in his office and is standing up for her, saying that if Sabrina thinks she's fit to be in these classes, then she's fit to be in the classes. Like, test her knowledge and see if she can be in the classes, and then if she passes, then just let her be in those advanced classes and don't put her in like witching 101, which I don't fully agree with. Like, you can't just like fully jump to the advanced stuff when you don't even know the basics. That's just not how this works. But Sabrina thinks she can get whatever she wants, and she usually does, which is why the show is actually insane. Supposed to think that she's in the right all the time when it is very obvious she's not. Like, there are things that she does in the show that I'm like, girl, none of this would have happened if you just didn't do the thing that you did, which happens later in the season, but we'll get to that. Blackwood agrees and takes out this thing called Acerine Configuration Arcane Puzzle that she has to solve, and if she solves it, he will let her be in the advanced classes. Sabrina leaves, then Blackwood and Zelda are left alone in his office, and he asks Zelda if she would be Lady Blackwood's midwife because she's pregnant and that she's miscarried twice already, so he wants to make sure she has a midwife that he trusts, and that midwife is Zelda because she's delivered multiple babies before, is the Lord. She's like been a midwife before, so she knows what she's doing, and so he asks her. Sabrina, after leaving Faustus's office, runs into Nick again because he's just lurking in every corner she may possibly pass by because he's weird in this season. She runs into him and he explains to her that he dated all of the Weird Sisters at the same time, which is why Prudence hates him so much. He also points out the arcane puzzle that's in her hands and tells her that it is something that her father created, and Faustus has actually been trying to solve it for 20 years but has had no luck, so that's why he passed it on to her to get her to figure it out. The answers are probably in her father's journals, and so she asks Nick to sneak one of the journals out of the library to give it to her, but he then tells her that if he gets caught, they both get expelled, which, like, yeah, if you're not supposed to take something out of the library, then don't. But of course he does it because he's like in love with her and it's been a day. At Susie's house, Roz tells Harvey about Susie's uncle and what he saw, and then he saw a monster down in the mines and basically like went insane, and Harvey like connects the dots and is like, wait, Uncle Jesse probably saw the same thing that I did when I was a kid and I was in the mines and I was playing hide and seek and I was traumatized. He then agrees to go over to Susie's house later that day after school for the weekend. Luke pops up again, calls Ambrose and asks him on a date, but because Ambrose is banished to the house and is basically on house arrest, he can't leave the property. So he asks Hilda to help him astral project so he can go on this date with Luke, which the gays will do anything to be gay. Like, that's just like he's doing something he's not supposed to do just so he can see a boy. Hilda, of course, tells him it's not a good idea because astral projecting is being put on a plane that no living person, mortal or otherwise, should be on because that's where the dead exist and only them are supposed to exist, and that if he astral projecting for too long, the psychopumps will come and get him. And then Zelda pops up, makes some passive aggressive remark to Hilda, and that's what causes Hilda to agree to help Ambrose do the thing that she knows will piss Zelda off. These characters just run purely on spite for majority of this show, and especially in this season, like, it's just like the one motivator for 90% of the characters in the show. Back in Faustus's office, Wardwell is there and is explaining to him that Sabrina is her responsibility as a responsibility told to her by the Dark Lord, so she needs to be making sure that Sabrina is doing what she needs to do and is becoming super advanced, and if she doesn't advance in the way that she is supposed to, Wardwell will eat him. So that's fun. In this, Blackwell is basically tells Wardwell, hey, well, if you want to get to her, like, you can torment her friends and her aunties to get her to be on your side and do what you want, which is insane. Like, this is literally a 16-year-old girl that you guys are talking about as as if she's literally the devil herself and like is causing you guys so much annoyance, which she does later on, to give her credit, but like it's not right now. Because what, she wanted to be in more advanced classes? That was an unreasonable ask. That doesn't mean you can torment her family. What is wrong with you? And shows up to the house while Hilda is helping Ambrose astral project, and because Hilda is distracted, she leaves Miss Wardwell by herself. Wardwell is saying that she is a customer and all, like, lying, and so Hilda disappears. Wardwell then snoops around their house and takes nail clippings, hair, and pieces of their clothes to then use later in a spell. Ambrose is astral projecting down in the embalming room, which love that for him, and he is at the coffee shop, bookshop, diner with Luke, and as soon as he is there, the psychopumps, which are like these little sparrow birds that pop up, start appearing, and by the time that Luke gets there, there's a bunch of them, and so he realizes, I have to go, because if I don't go, I'm going to die. But of course, Luke doesn't know that Ambrose is banished, so he can't like leave the property, so he leaves quickly, and then Zelda comes home and realizes that Hilda was helping Ambrose astral project, and she gets really mad. The Weird Sisters continue to torment Sabrina while she is at the school, and they claim that her father betrayed their kind, so she will too, which is an insane take to have, considering that you don't know her, and also Sabrina is not her parents' actions. But okay, not to defend her now, but I am gonna defend her now, because actively she hasn't betrayed the coven yet. Well, I guess she kind of has, because she abandoned her dark baptism, but that's besides the point here. They then tell her that the harrowing is not over, and it's just getting started, which, like, it's literally the second night. She only has one more night left. She's taken to the woods to walk the path that the witches of the Greendale 13 had to walk. They make her stand in front of the tree and then take her shoes and robe, so she is just in her night slip gown thing, and she is not allowed to turn around because she's facing the tree, and she's not allowed to turn around, and if she does, she'll die. And there are all these like demon things behind her, like making all these noises and like trying to get her to turn around, and she hears like Harvey being tortured to death, and then her mom being tortured to death, and her dad. It's not fun. It's honestly traumatizing to have to listen to your loved ones die, even though they're not actually dying. You know in your mind that they're not actually the ones being tortured, but it still hurts to hear. You're imagining that, and it's like your worst nightmare. He comes the next morning, collects Sabrina, is like, I have to show you something. And it turns out he's actually a ghost child. He's dead, and there's a bunch of other children, so he leads her to their graves, and they were other children that died during their harrowing. So Sabrina's like, this is not okay that witches are killing other witches. Sabrina calls home after she gets back to the academy after Quentin exposes the truth and tells her aunties about the dead children and asks for their help. And she explains to her aunties what the Weird Sisters are doing to her, and they show up to the school to fight on her behalf because they're like, this is actually insane, fucking stupid, like I can't believe this is happening. They then go to Faustus, and Faustus is like, I'll look into it. He's not gonna look into it because he doesn't care about Sabrina. He doesn't like her. Sabrina brings her aunties out to the woods to go see the other kids, and Hilda talks to them, and she realizes they don't want to be free. They just want to get revenge, because we find out that the reason why Hilda understands is because Zelda was the one who conducted Hilda's harrowing, and Hilda was just really pissed at her for a very long time because she felt betrayed at the fact that her sister would put her through that, which, like, understandable. Why would you do that to your own sister? But like, be like, they can't do that to my niece. That's wrong. What are you talking about? Anyway, Harvey goes to Susie's house to go talk to Uncle Jesse, and he tells Roz that he also saw something down in the mine, so maybe him and Jesse saw the same thing, and so he can understand what Jesse saw and kind of get some answers. But when he goes to go talk to Uncle Jesse wakes up and tries to strangle him to death, and they're all shaken, obviously, because like Susie's like, he never wakes up like this. Well, yeah, I would hope he doesn't. Jesse then wakes up and says,
he's going to eat your souls.
So it's like very clear that Jesse is possessed by a demon. After they all kind of calm down and Jesse is completely knocked out, they go and check on him again, and we see that they tied him to the bedposts, spread eagle, so he can't escape and try to kill any of them again, because before he was just kind of sleeping in bed, and then Harvey poked the bear and made things a lot worse. Hilda confronts Zelda about her harrowing experience, and they have a very sweet sweet moment. Zelda apologizes for putting her sister through that, and instead of going to bed, the two of them go downstairs to read together because they're trying to make their sisterly bond stronger. So back at the school, Sabrina is woken up by the sisters again. She then pretends to beg for mercy, asks them not to do this, and then she just goes along with it. They then take her back out to the hanging tree and put a noose around her neck. They go to hang her from the tree. She gives this whole speech about how the witches of the past would be absolutely appalled at their behavior and that they're doing this harrowing because witches aren't supposed to kill other witches, like the mortals were the enemy is not them, and like the fact that they're turning on their own coven is like insane, which it is, because like their whole thing is like the coven is better than mortals. But it's like, okay, if that's true, then why are witches other witches and no one's saying anything about it? The writing in the show is like so absolutely insane to the point where like it just doesn't really make sense. There's so many plot holes in this. The logic for the motivations for certain things just don't make any sense. She's not the one that's hung. Her feet are firmly planted on the ground, and the three sisters are the ones that get hung and are choking out in the air. And it turns out the children are the ones who are helping assist Sabrina, but the weird sisters don't know that, so they just think Sabrina's the one doing it. Basically, it tells them that she'll let them down if they stop, and they agree as they're on the brink of death. And then afterwards, after they fall to the ground, Sabrina then offers Prudence her hand to help her up, and then also threatens her that if she ever talks poorly about her parents again, she'll kill her. So that's fun. Sabrina eventually leaves the school because her immersion is done. The 3 days are up. She talks to Quentin, and Quentin tells her that they will watch over the school. Nick runs into her before she leaves and gives her one of her dad's journals that he stole from the library, and tells her to look through it. Before we go back with Sabrina to her house, we see that Father Blackwood is yelling at Prudence because he is absolutely appalled at the fact that Sabrina was able to best her and her sisters when she doesn't have half the abilities that they do. You're beefing with a 16-year-old girl. Like, I understand she's like making a really bad example out of everyone that's in the coven, but also like, I need you to get a grip. We then see Miss Wardwell watching over Sabrina through Sabrina's mirror in her room, which she actually charmed when she was snooping around their house, taking bits and pieces from their home. Sabrina and Harvey are talking on the phone, and Harvey goes to tell her about what happened with Uncle Jesse, but then stops himself, and he doesn't tell her what happened. So Sabrina's kind of like in the dark about all of that, and Harvey and Roz and Susie are just kind of keeping it to themselves. She then hangs up with Harvey and starts going through her dad's journals, and as she's going through her dad's journals, she's trying to figure out how to solve the arcane puzzle. And as she's doing that, she's looking through and sees that like if she folds the pages a certain way, then it like will create the answer to the puzzle, and it has something to do with her mother. So like, yeah, of course Father Blackwood was never going to be able to crack that because he hated Diana. And I honestly don't think he was given the puzzle. I think it was just like it was left in the high priest's office when her dad died, and he was just like, okay, this is mine now and I'm gonna try to figure it out, but it's clearly not working. But she ends up cracking the puzzle, and after she cracks the puzzle, a bunch of sand falls out, and then a demon comes out of her closet, and she screams bloody murder, which like valid because a demon just came out of your closet, and she runs downstairs. We are downstairs. Zelda is reading the Dark Bible, and Hilda is reading a mortal romance book, which I don't know if that doesn't highlight their personalities more. Hilda also then tells Zelda that she's going to apply for a job in the mortal world since she's excommunicated and can't really do anything for the coven anymore, so she's just gonna like chill out in the mortal world. And before Zelda can give her opinion on this, Sabrina runs downstairs and is screaming, and the demon's following after her. The demon is this woman. She's a little scary and terrifying to look at, but I'll tell you her name in a second. Ambrose runs upstairs. He doesn't know what the fuck is going on. The 4 of them put a seal on the house to make sure that the demon doesn't escape. The demon then tells them that she is after the Spellmans. Edward was the one who's imprisoned her in that arcane puzzle, and she's been trapped in that puzzle for 70 years. It reveals that it's a sleep demon and it will torment them through nightmares. Zelda then traps it in an urn to contain it. Sabrina questions why her father would trap a demon in a configuration to begin with, and Hilda says that he had been saying for years that he had a sleep demon plaguing his nightmares, but none of them believed him. Actually crazy, especially if you're a witch. Why wouldn't you take them seriously? Sabrina's then asking Hilda what would happen if the sleep demon did lull them all to sleep, if she got them all to sleep, then she would torment them to the point in which she can get them to break the spell, the binding spell off of the house so she can be set free and wreak havoc on the world. Miss Wardwell is watching Sabrina through the mirror still, so she sees this demon and is like, what the fuck? It turns out that actually wasn't Hilda, it was the demon disguised as Hilda getting Sabrina to go to sleep, and Wardwell is still watching through Sabrina's mirror, so she sees this and is like, wait, I know you, and then identifies the demon as Batty Bat. Wardwell and her kind of talk through the mirror and she's like, do not hurt Sabrina, and Batty Bat's like, yeah, okay, whatever, and just kind of moves on. So Batty Bat then tries to kill Salem because she knows that if she doesn't, Salem's going to continue to try and protect Sabrina. All four of them are having separate nightmares, and then we go into each of their nightmares. So Sabrina is having a nightmare, and as her nightmare starts, it turns out that the Weird Sisters are at Baxter High with her. Nick is also there, and then Nick and Harvey are fighting over her. To get one up on Nick, Harvey proposes to Sabrina in the middle of the school, which, like, okay. Then cut to Sabrina and Harvey's wedding. As they're at the altar, the coven is there, and like Harvey's dad is there with Tommy and like a bunch of other minors and stuff, about to exchange vows, and she tells him that she's a witch, and he basically says it doesn't matter, like he doesn't care that she's a witch, like he loves her anyway. Nick bursts in the middle of the ceremony and like tells Sabrina to run away with him. Harvey won't understand her the way he does because he's a warlock and he gets it. He then like snaps and then tries to strangle Sabrina. As he's trying to kill her, the people from the coven are just sitting there and not doing anything, like they don't react at all. Harvey and a whole bunch of other of the miners like throw her into this like nail coffin thing and slam it shut. Sleep demon appears and is like, tell me how to get through the bindings on the house and I'll set you free, and Sabrina's like, no, f you. She continues being tortured in the nail chamber, and then we cut to Ambrose's nightmare. Batty Bat didn't have any success with Sabrina, so might as well try to have success with Ambrose. And so Ambrose's nightmare starts off. Hilda tells him about a body that just got dropped off and he needs to perform an autopsy, and it was somebody that lived alone and he was stabbed to death, and like no one cared because he lived by himself and he didn't have any friends and whatever. And then Ambrose goes to go do the autopsy and takes the sheet off the body, and it turns out it's him. He has to do the autopsy on himself, and he takes out his own heart and bites into it and says that it was bitter. Wardwell then pops up in Ambrose's nightmare and runs into him and is like, never mind, I wasn't looking for you, I was looking for Sabrina. And he's like, okay, whatever. He then later in his own nightmare meets with a high priest, and who then says he's set free and gives him a bunch of money and new clothes and all of this, and the demon Batty Bat then stops him and stabs him to death. And then when Ambrose wakes up again, he's now the dead body watching himself perform the autopsy on him, and it's just kind of like a continuous loop. We're then in Hilda's nightmare. She gets a call from Principal Hawthorne, who asks her to come by, and then he reveals that he actually didn't have anything to talk about with Sabrina. He just wanted to talk to her, and then asks her to dinner. She then is home cooking dinner for her date. They're having it at her house. Hilda is like being super mean to her and is telling her pretty enough and like it's not worth it and blah blah blah, and like as Hilda's like trying to figure out what to wear, and Zelda just keeps insulting her to the point where like Hilda snaps and goes off on her and then casts a spell to sew Zelda's mouth shut, her to stop being mean to her, which like that says a lot about their character and relationship. Hawthorne then comes over and they're having a nice dinner. He's then telling Hilda this really weird story about how when his mom was pregnant, she was pregnant with twins, and he absorbed his twin in the womb, and then he pulls his shirt up and reveals that his twin's face is actually on his stomach. This show is literally so insane and like so graphic and gross and weird. Like there are just so many like weird details that exist within the show that like I fully could not tell you why they exist and motivated the writers to write this in the first place, but I digress. He has then sewn her and Zelda together by the hip and basically is like, well, I had to live with it, so now you do too, and like leaves. And so her and Zelda are fighting because they can't move around because they're literally sewn together like conjoined twins, and it's like, it's so graphic. And cut to Zelda's nightmare. We start off with her teaching the children of night stories from the Dark Bible, and she's reading to them, and then she gets a notice that the Dark Lord is going to be dining at their house for dinner. She then is like, oh my gosh, I'm going to make his favorite meal, which is cooked child. And she doesn't have any mortal children on hand, so she kills one of the children of night that were in her little church group. Lord then comes in. He looks like Father Blackwood. Hilda also said she's also going to make something. She's going to make like her veggie pie. Zelda's like, no, he's not going to like that because he's not a vegetarian. He's a cannibal. Like, he eats children. And so he comes over and she's like, I made your favorite dish, cooked child. And they then eat the child and he's like, this is really bitter. Like, did you use like a Christian child? She's like, no, I couldn't get one of them. It was a child of night. And he gets really pissed and is like, well, then I'm not dining with you. I'm gonna dine with your sister. And so she's forced to go sit in the kitchen when Hilda gets all of the attention from the Dark Lord, which is Zelda's worst nightmare. He's pissed off and kills Hilda again and buries her in the backyard in the like plot of land that allows her to come back and be resurrected. The Dark Lord shows up and is asking for Hilda, and Zelda tells him that she killed her, and he basically says, well, you did the wrong thing, so now she's never going to come back and you've just lost your sister because you decided to kill her out of jealousy. And so then Zelda has a nervous breakdown because she thinks that her sister is like actually dead and by her own hand. Then return to Sabrina's nightmare, and Miss Wardwell shows up, and Sabrina's like, Miss Wardwell, what are you doing here? And Wardwell is basically like, you have to wake up. Like, this is a nightmare. Like, Batty Bat is trying to get you guys to let her free. Like, you have to wake up and wake up your aunts and Ambrose to trap her again. Sabrina eventually wakes up, and then she hides under her bed, and while she's under her bed she sees the destroy trap, and she's like, wait, we can trap Batty Bat again if I just use this again to trap her. But the trap is like completely destroyed, like it literally fell apart after she solved it, so she doesn't really know what to do, and she's like, well, I have to wake up my aunties and Ambrose in order for them to help me. So she doesn't know how to do that, so she gets Salem and is like, come with me, like we need to make sure that like Batty Bat doesn't come and get me and kill me. She goes into Ambrose's room and just like tries to like shake him awake, which like obviously that's not going to work. So she comes to the conclusion that if she uses Foxglove to help her lucid dream, she can then enter their nightmares and wake them up that way, and just like show up and be like, hey, get up, in the same way that like Wardwell did to her. That he has to distract Batty Bat, so she's able to do this. He then like shapeshifts into her and runs off as Sabrina is lucid dreaming, and she's like in the embalming room and like puts the sheet over her head to like act like a dead body. Salem is distracting her, and eventually Batty Bat like catches up to him and realizes it's not actually Sabrina, but at that point she's already entered everyone else's nightmares. She tries to wake up her Aunt Zelda first, but because Zelda is literally inconsolable and like just like grief stricken, so she can't wake up. She goes to Hilda and tells her what to do, and so Hilda can then wake herself up, and then she goes and gets Ambrose and tells Ambrose to keep Batty Bat distracted in his nightmare as well if she comes back, to like make sure that Batty Bat doesn't catch up to her in reality. Hilda gives her the idea to use the spiders, and so then Sabrina lures Batty Bat into the living room dream catcher, and the spiders create a dream catcher in the doorway. She then is trapped in the dream catcher by the spiders, and then they're able to trap her in a jar. They also then ask Sabrina if she remembers anything from their nightmares, and she lies and says no. They obviously don't want her to see the way that they were, or like the nightmares that they were having, because it like is very telling of their greatest fears and everything like that. So she lies and says no. Calls Harvey in the middle of the night and asks if he would hurt her, and he's like, no, obviously. He mentioned something about Wardwell, and then Sabrina's like, oh my god, wait, Wardwell showed up in my fucking nightmare. Like, why was she there? So then she shows up to Wardwell's house and demands answers in the middle of the night, and that is the end of episode 5. So Sabrina goes to Wardwell's house. Wardwell lets her in and tells Sabrina that she is a witch and she's been spying on Sabrina to keep her safe. Sabrina says she'll bring it to the high priest, and she lies and then says that her father was the one who asked her to watch over her. She was excommunicated from a coven and sought out Sabrina's dad for help, and he like took her in and like basically comes up with this whole elaborate story of like who she is, even though that's not what she is. We don't fully know the truth. We just know that she is in cahoots with the Dark Lord. And the reason why she went to her father was because she also fell in love with the mortal. So like Sabrina can like put the pieces together and be like, oh, my dad sympathized with you, and it's just a lie. Sabrina is like not happy with this at all, and like thinks that Wardwell has been lying to her this whole time, and so she gets really mad and tells Wardwell to stay away from her. Ambrose is then like, it's probably a good thing that she was, because if she wasn't, then Batty Bat probably would have killed all of them. And Sabrina's like, I don't give a shit, and so she wipes away all of the spells and the charms that were put on the house by Wardwell that she knows of, because there are some that she doesn't know of, obviously. Harvey is going through it. He's having like these weird visions of Uncle Jesse, and it's just like scaring himself half to death. Tommy checks on him, and he like tries to act like he's fine, but obviously he's not fine, and Tommy can tell. This is also seeing Uncle Jesse. Like, they're all having like weird visions about Uncle Jesse and like him being a demon and possessed. Susie's also seeing their uncle and is told he will smite you. He doesn't say who he is. Obviously we the audience know he means the devil. Like, obviously he is possessed by a demon, so like a demon is going to say all these like horrible, horrendous things for like an obvious reason. And Susie then goes to check on him and finds him still tied to the bed, so it was obviously like a hallucination. Hilda is interviewing for the job at the coffee shop, bookstore, diner that is owned by Mr. C. Mr. C is the owner. He was like an ex-weatherman at Greendale, and then like stopped being a weatherman and opened the cafe, bookshop, diner. He's also a horror host, so like he dresses up as like Dracula, and she has to dress up as like Lady Frankenstein to work at the store. The store itself is such a weird setting, but it's also a place that I would love to be at. This coffee shop, bookstore, diner that is monster movie themed. Like, that seems like so much fun. She does get the job, obviously, because Mr. C's like, this woman is pretty. Zelda is then checking in on Lady Blackwood, who was pregnant because she was asked to be her midwife. That witches are pregnant for 13 months. So a year and a month, which sounds like hell on earth. I'm not gonna lie. I never had kids, but the idea of being pregnant for over a year sounds absolutely horrendous, and like I would never ever want to experience that. Blackwood then says that she's worried because the previous time she's been pregnant, it's resulted in miscarriages, which is like valid that she's like concerned about that. She's also worried that Father Blackwood is not going to get a male heir, because that's really all he fucking cares about, because he's a man. Sexism is still a thing that exists even in the witch world. Harvey, Roz, and Susie finally tells Sabrina about Uncle Jesse, and they explain that Harvey and Susie's uncle saw the same thing. Like, well, it might have been a demon, and Sabrina has to play dumb. Obviously it's a demon, but she has to be like, what? A demon? That's crazy. Demons aren't real. They all admit that they saw the same thing, which was Uncle Jesse threatening them, and then also Uncle Jesse being like, he's gonna eat your souls. Like, that's like the same. They were all there at the same time, and they all saw the same thing, and so he questions if Sabrina even believes him, but she's literally just playing dumb. Like, she believes you because she knows you're telling the truth, because this is something that is real and could happen. Brings the problem home like she usually does and talks to her aunties about it. They deny that it's even possible that Uncle Jesse got possessed by a demon, so they're like, we should just rule it out and let them fend for themselves. And Sabrina, of course, like pushes back because she wants to protect her friends. And Zelda isn't happy with this because she hates mortals. Like, she then, because knows that her aunties aren't going to help her, goes to Ambrose for help. Her plan is to astral project into Susie's house and talk to Uncle Jesse and have Ambrose watch over her body, but Ambrose is like, astral projecting is not a good idea. And it's like, okay, pot calling the kettle black. Like, dude, you just did it like a few days ago. Like, don't even. I was talking to him, and he reveals that he is a demon, and like he tries to attack her and then realizes that she's astral projecting and not even really there, so he doesn't give her the full information, because he's like, well, you're not even really here, so why would I tell you the truth if I can't cause you physical harm? Like, that's stupid. Like, he's a demon, he wants to cause issues to humans, and his name is Mursikai, the Devourer of Flesh, and it turns out that's not his actual name. It's just the word ice cream rearranged, like a word jumble. Jesse then wakes up, and the demon tries to possess Sabrina, and Salem is also watching over her, so he goes and grabs Ambrose's and is like, hey, something bad is happening. Sabrina then goes to apologize to Harvey, because she's like, I believe you. Like, I don't want you to think that I think that you're crazy, because you're not crazy, and I can't tell you the truth as to why I don't think you're crazy, but I don't think you're lying. She says that she wants to go into the mines to try and find a clue of what could be there, and Harvey's like, no, we can't go back. We can't go down there. That's where the demon lives. he looks at Jesse's possessed body and is like, well, maybe we should. I'll be brave. I'll put on my big boy pants and we'll go down there together. And Sabrina's like, I'll hold your hand. It's okay. Wardwell is familiar, which is a raven outside. Harvey's outside the window, so like Wardwell knows what's going on. Wardwell knows what's up, what's happening. In the mines, Sabrina ends up finding a stone with a serpent on it, and while she's down there, runs into Wardwell. Wardwell's like, why do you have a trapping stone in your hand? And Sabrina's like, why the are you following me? I told you to leave me alone. Her and Harvey end up splitting up in the mines, and Harvey calls out for help. He just saw a rock that was in the shape of Satan, but it wasn't Satan himself. It was just a rock that looked like Satan. Because why would that be there? And they're leaving, and it starts glowing red behind him. So like, what hell is in the mines? Harvey isn't just crazy. Like, of course it's actually there. Back at Susie's house, Susie's dad is talking to a physician about taking Jesse somewhere else, and Susie's like, no, about how Jesse is ill and how when they were kids, like, Jesse would dress up in dresses and was struggling with his sexuality and his demons to deal with. And Susie's overhearing this and is listening on the stairs and like snaps at their dad because they're like, I'm like, they're queer obviously, so like Susie demands that they go and see the place before they send their Uncle Jesse there, because they don't want to send him to some like terrible place that's going to treat him like shit, which I think is valid and very sweet of Susie to do. Roz then goes to the doctor, and the doctor tells her that she's like losing her vision at a rapid rate. This is Nana Ruth, okay, we love Nana Ruth. Talking to her dad about her grandma, she sees Jesse's possessed body behind her father in the office. Sabrina continues to do research, and based off of the stone, she finds out that the demon's name is Apophis, and she says if she's able to get the demon out of Jesse and fuses the stone back together, the stone would be able to trap him in it. And so as long as the stone doesn't break back open, it will stay trapped forever. So while in demonology at the Academy of Unseen Arts, she asks Father Blackwood about exorcisms, and he basically laughs in her face and is like, witches don't perform exorcisms. That's something that was made up by the Catholic Church. Then why do they exist? And do they work? Like, she basically is like, well, if they don't work, like, whatever. And she telling him about Apophis, and he's like, well, if Apophis is possessing a human mortal, then that host is probably gonna die soon, because Apophis is parasite demon. So he just like uses up his hosts until they're no longer living, and just jumps from mortal to mortal, and that's just like what he's been doing forever. More likely that Jesse will die, and then Apophis will just jump to another host. In her mind is Harvey, Roz, or Susie, and she can't let that happen because she can't let her friends die, because she can't give up her connection to the mortal world. Nick asks her about it and hits on her at the same time. I literally cannot stand his character in this first season. He's a weirdo. He says that he's down to share with Harvey because she's half mortal, half witch, so like it only makes sense if she has two boyfriends, a warlock, one's a mortal. Like, what the fuck are you saying? I need you to like take a second to think about what you're saying before you speak. But clearly he's like that type of man character, so like he can't do that. He's incapable of doing so. Nick's character does get better. He does get better. I do end up liking him later in the show, but in the first season he's such a weird creep, and it's like, dude, you were shooting your shot over and over and over again when you know that she has a boyfriend that she loves. Comes home and sees that Wardwell is at her house, and she told her aunties everything, and they aren't shocked by their brother for asking Wardwell to look over her. They're like, no, that makes sense. That checks out, actually. Edward was a weirdo like that. It's like, how? Why? You don't know this woman. Also, she came into your house and lied to Hilda. Like, I don't... Okay, we just take things at face value? Got it. Okay, cool. Brina continues to insist on helping Jesse because she's like, well, if Jesse dies, Apophis can jump to another host and, like, kill my friends, and I'm not letting that happen. And says she will go to the Catholic Church since the Church of Night wasn't going to help her, and Wardwell informs her that her father wrote a rite for the situation specifically that would allow her to perform an exorcism. Wardwell promises to protect her during the exorcism, and Hilda also joins because she's excommunicated. Again, like, exorcisms are frowned upon by the Church of Night, so Zelda's like, absolutely not. Am I helping you with this? Like, I will be excommunicated. And Hilda's like, I'm already excommunicated, so what else am I gonna do? Sure, I'll help you with the demon exorcism on your friend's uncle. Like, hello? What are you talking about? What are you saying? Ambrose then encourages Zelda to help them because he's like, if she dies, like, it's kind of your fault because you didn't help her. Basically guilt trips her into helping them with the exorcism. So the three of them head to Susie's house while Susie and her father are not home. So Sabrina has enough time and she begins the exorcism, calls upon the powers of witches before Jesse begins to like float above the bed. It's very like The Exorcist, but like a full-grown man who who is thrown up on himself and is trying to kill her. First one she calls upon is Lilith, which will come up later. I promise you this will come up later. It's a very big important detail that they threw into the show. The demon then continues to push back with psychological games. Zelda then appears and grabs on. She appears when Sabrina starts to doubt herself, and Zelda's like, no, you can do this. You are strong. You are a woman. You are a spellman. Like, we can do this together. And the four of them perform the exorcism. Disgusting worm-looking thing crawls out of Jesse's mouth. The gore in this show and just like that aspect of it was like very heavy in season 1. It eventually starts to go dwindle down, but like it was real strong. It was a real strong element in the first season. I'm not even gonna lie, like it was a lot. So they end up throwing it into a well, and the two halves of the stone in the well as well. Well, in that case, worm, demon, Apophis, and the stone are down there, so he's technically trapped in the well. Zelda then grounds Sabrina for getting involved in mortal affairs. Girl, you also helped. The hypocrisy that exists in the show is crazy. Sabrina and Wardwell seem to like patch things up and it's fine, but unfortunately, Uncle Jesse does not live. So Sabrina's like, well, what was the point? I did all of this to try and save him, save Susie the heartbreak, and it didn't even matter. Like, he still died. And they think it's a heart attack, like his heart just kind of gave out, and so Susie's upset, obviously. And Sabrina doesn't tell Susie about the exorcism for obvious reasons. But they do come home and find Father Blackwood in their house and scolds them for performing an unauthorized exorcism and says he should excommunicate all of them. Zelda pushes back against Blackwood and congratulates him on having twins, so that Lady Blackwood is pregnant with twins, and she says that if he excommunicates her, then she can't help Lady Blackwood through her pregnancy, which will be really hard on her. So like obviously he needs to keep her, so she basically like manipulates him into keeping them in the coven and not excommunicating her and Sabrina. Ambrose is feeling down about his house arrest and talks to Father Blackwood, but he gives him no hope whatsoever. Mr. Putnam then calls and tells them that Jesse has passed away and he needs to like bring him over to the funeral home. Hilda runs into Luke at the coffee shop, puts a charm on his coffee to get him to call Ambrose. Like, Hilda is such a wing woman. I love her. She's like one of my favorite characters in the show. And then Sabrina goes to go visit Wardwell after hearing about Jesse's death, and then we get a flashback of Wardwell seeing Jesse after he is finally himself, and tells distraught Jesse that Sabrina performing the exorcism was part of the Dark Lord's plan, and it's like all going to plan and all the pieces are falling together. And then she was the one who killed Jesse via voodoo doll. It wasn't Sabrina, but Sabrina still thinks it was her. Sabrina like questions her own ability and says that she's failed, and like questions if she's even like living up to the Dark Lord's standards. Wardwell asks her like a bunch of other questions and like makes her not doubt herself. We're getting into the home stretch. We're in episode 7. I promise you, I know this video is going to be like a million years long, but I like to yap, so like it's fine. Episode 7, Sabrina and Harvey are walking back to Sabrina's house, and they're talking about their Thanksgiving plans. There has only been 3 weeks that have passed, so the entirety of the show happens in a year. I want you to keep that in mind as I put these videos out. All of what just happened in the last 6 episodes has happened in 3 weeks. From her birthday, which was Halloween, to Thanksgiving. 3 weeks. Harvey mentions his grandpa coming, remember this detail, and Sabrina invites him inside, but he declines the offer, and he notices something bloody on their front door. You're walking your girlfriend home, and there's just like bloody carcass on her door. What the how do you even react in that situation? Because I wouldn't be normal. Hey, this was fun. We had a nice run. Never talk to me again. Goodbye. So Sabrina goes inside and was like, what the why is there entrails on our front door? And this apparently means that they've been selected to participate in the Feast of Feasts. Nothing says festive like lamb entrails on your front door, I guess, in the coven. A nice paper invitation would do. Puff of smoke in the house, like lamb entrails on my property? Like, why? So this is the coven's holiest holiday. It's basically like their version of Thanksgiving, with a very different menu to honor Sister Freya. Sister Freya was one of the witches that they slit her throat and offered her body to feed the witches when they were forced out into the woods. So every year they have like what is a lottery, and one of them gets chosen to be the queen, which means that they eat them. Cannibalism. Thought cannibalism was off the table. It's not considered a high honor, which, like, no offense, please don't eat me. I feel like that shouldn't have to be something that I have to say. Wouldn't want to be a witch, and then it's like, hey, by the way, there is a chance that you may get eaten once a year. What the fuck are you talking about? No. No. Why is cannibalism in the show? Dude, rightfully Sabrina's horrified. One of the very few valid reactions she has. Zelda says that she will be the one representing their family. Every time that they've been put in the lottery, they never get picked, so she's not really worried about it. Back at school, Wardwell's giving this like weird class about family trees the week of Thanksgiving and singles out Harvey, and Sabrina asks her about the Feast of Feasts and if it's like possible to opt out. Harvey asks his grandpa about their family and if they were always miners or not, and he says that there were hill people that stole their land, and Harvey asks about this and his grandpa says that they had to get rid of the hill people. Mass murder and genocide of individuals. His grandpa also gives this weird cryptic answer about going hunting as a family to show him what happened and how they did it. Like, you thought your family was weird during Thanksgiving. Imagine having Harvey's grandpa. Jump to Susie and their dad talking about their family history, and Susie is told about their Aunt Dorothea, who was down here, and how she used to dress like a man and not like a woman, and that there are all these journals that Susie's dad has, and so Susie takes them and starts looking through them for their assignment for school. Roz then goes to go visit Nana Ruth. We love Nana Ruth. I love Nana Ruth so much. Who is also blind, and asks her about their family history. She then tells Roz about what she calls the cunning, and how all Walker women are cursed with the cunning, and that's why they go blind. So it's like a sixth sense where they can see things that others can't, and they have like these visions and stuff, and it makes up for the fact that they go blind. Started when she was around Roz's age, so it should be happening very soon with Roz, which, like, OMG spoiler, it does. And then we find out Prudence is also one of the 14 tributes for Queen. Sabrina questions why Prudence would be willing to be sacrificed, and they tell her that she wouldn't understand because she's not a full witch. Sabrina then sees Nick and asks his take on the entire Feast of Feast situation, and he's a pick-me, so he thinks it's bonkers. He also gives insight that when her dad was high priest, banned the tradition because it's absurd. Blackwood was the one who reinstated it when he became high priest. He then asks if she's a tribute, and she says no, that her aunt is going to be a tribute, but then she's like, well, if I am the tribute, maybe my aunt will change her mind about her opinion on the Feast of Feast and this tradition and how ridiculous it is, and maybe I can show her how insane this entire situation is. Which is like, girl, no, sit down. Then are at the Feast of Feasts with the coven. They have to choose a tribute, and Blackwood gives a whole speech about how it's like the fate of the coven and is more important than anything else, and how like this is like a high honor, and like the coven is life essentially, like, but in less bro terms. Sabrina breaks in during the middle of the ceremony, interrupts, and says that she would like to volunteer to take the place as her family's tribute, and Zelda's like, what the hell are you doing? Stop. Sabrina gives her the "it's a tradition" sarcasm to push her on to admit that it's barbaric, so Sabrina doesn't have to participate. But if Zelda, of course, does not do that in front of the entire coven, because if she did, she would be excommunicated, and obviously that's like one of her worst nightmares, so why would she do that? She lets Sabrina go up there and represent the family. Lady Blackwood comes around with like a box and in the box is a slip of paper, and in front of them is a candle, and each of them have to burn their slip of paper in the candle. Sabrina's flame turns red instead of yellow, and Prudence's flame turns white. Prudence is the one who's chosen to be queen of the feast, and Sabrina is picked as her handmaiden. So she has to spoil Prudence for the next 3 days before the feast, and Ambrose makes a joke about how it's a tradition to like sweeten her meat, which is so disgusting. So Prudence arrives to the Spellman's house and immediately like starts flirting with Ambrose, and she makes herself at home and starts demanding things of Sabrina, and Sabrina obviously has to oblige because she's the handmaiden, so she has to listen to everything that Prudence asks her for. So Sabrina says she's not going to eat her and asks Prudence if she wants out, and Prudence is like, no, I don't, like this is like what I want. She explains that the reason why she wants this is that when she gets eaten by the coven, she then becomes part of every single witch in the coven. Her soul is then sent to the other souls where the former witches of the Feast of Feasts go in high honor of the Dark Lord. So Sabrina continues to push, and because she can't ever have anyone disagree with her on anything, she says that if it doesn't happen, then they're just her. And Prudence is like, imagine not having faith in anything. Embarrassing for you. So Sabrina then sleeps on the floor of her own room while Prudence is in her bed, and wakes up to absolute madness, wakes up to the sound of something, and then she goes upstairs, basically find an happening in Ambrose's room with Prudence, the other weird sisters, Ambrose, and Nicholas is also there. He's like, Sabrina, join us. Side eye, okay? And she's like, no, I'm not doing that. And he's like, oh, so then you and I could just go to your room alone? Dude, no, that was not what that was. She says no. Obviously, he's such a pick-me. Oh my god. He's such a pick-me in this first season. It actually drives me up a wall. He's the worst version of a male character you could possibly have. There's a difference between being a pick-me and yearning, and he is full pick-me. There's no yearning that is happening. It's just weird, uncomfortable behavior. Nick is not a girl's girl. The next morning, Sabrina says that she thinks all life is precious, so that's why she's trying to save Prudence, because she thinks all life is precious and Prudence shouldn't die. She then invites Prudence to come to school with her, and Prudence is like, no, why would I want to do that? I hate mortals. Do you forget that I hate mortals? Why would I want to come with you to your mortal school? And Sabrina's like, well, there will be boys there that you can torment. And Prudence is like, I'm coming, actually. That's my favorite pastime, so I'm coming. While we're at the school, Hawthorne makes a move on Wardwell. This happens a few times, and it's weird every time. Everyone in this fucking show is so damn horny all the time. It's actually exhausting. Like, it's like, I can't. It's hard for me to, well, it's not. Well, it is. It is then. It would be, I guess, if they were horny all the time. Okay, I'm done. So Prudence comes to school with Sabrina. Sabrina introduces her as one of her cousins. They start talking about their families. Susie talks about Dorothea and how she was a pirate, helped women escape from a religious persecution in Scotland and brought them here to Greendale. And Prudence says that she actually learned about Dorothea at her school. Susie's like, that's actually pretty cool. My aunt was a pretty cool individual, which, like, yeah, that is sick. And then Harvey says he learned about his family helping steal land from the hill people. And Prudence is like, do you want to know who they are? Who those hill people were actually? You want to know who they were? Witches, bitch, and you come from witch hunters. Fuck you, I'm gonna kill you. Sabrina steers her away because she's like, you can't just tell him he comes from witch hunters. And Sabrina's like, witches aren't real, Prudence, that's crazy talk. And then Prudence is like, well, witches kill witch hunters before they can kill us, so I'm gonna kill him. And Sabrina's like, if you touch him, I will kill you. Wardwell pops out of nowhere and basically tells them to stop being bitches. It's like a crazy thing to say to two high school girls, but sure, okay. Sabrina tries to get Wardwell to talk Prudence out of the Feast of Feasts, which she doesn't, and Prudence doesn't want to take advice from the excommunicated. Wardwell then tells them the story about a witch who was picked as queen but rejected the crown and then ran off into the woods of Greendale, and that's where she lives. And Sabrina suggests that they go and talk to her, and so Prudence is like, okay, fine, but only if my sisters can come. So the weird sisters appear with her. Connor's mom comes by again to the funeral home to pick up Connor's ashes, and she tells Hilda and Ambrose that they found a box of like witchy occult stuff in his room, so they believe that the reason why he got killed was because he was in a cult. And Ambrose volunteers to help and look into it because he's like, well, they don't understand what this is like we do, so he volunteers to help to get them answers. Wardwell, Sabrina, Prudence, and her sisters go into the woods to find Desmelda. She's the one that lives in the woods. This is her. They ask her about why she ran, and she says that she didn't run from the fact that she was queen. She ran from the high priest that was in power. She was a child, and all of those that volunteered were also children. Like, she was 14 years old. The high priest says that the Dark Lord told him that he has to initiate her the night before the Feast of Feasts. So, abuse of power, to be a creep and a Sabrina pushes back against Prudence that maybe the Dark Lord, that maybe it's Blackwood that's the one who's insisting that she becomes the queen to like get her out of the way. Prudence says she wants it, so it's not the same thing. Like, it's not the same thing that Desmelda went through. Like, she wanted to be queen, so of course she's going to be queen. Whether it was Blackwood or the Dark Lord or not, like, she still wants to do it, so it doesn't matter. Everything goes hunting with his grandpa, his brother, and his dad. They want him to be make the first kill of the deer. Deer is then shot, and then Sabrina, Wardwell, and the Weird Sisters and Desmelda also hear this, and Desmelda flips out. She's like, you have to leave. So it turns out the deer that was shot was actually not a deer, it was a familiar. Because a familiar was murdered, they are like, we need to get blood on whoever, we need to get revenge on whoever shot this familiar, because blood for blood and all of that. And so Wardwell pulls out this string that makes them and the familiar invisible, and then Harvey and his family come into view, and Sabrina is like absolutely appalled at the fact that she's watching Harvey walk around, and he basically like indirectly points a gun in her face, and Prudence is basically giving her the side eye the entire time. So Prudence questions her on her faith, and for Harvey, and is like, it's not so different than my faith in the Dark Lord, so why are you allowed to believe in what you believe in but I can't? Like, Sabrina thinks she's above everything, which is just makes her character insufferable sometimes. Susie and Roz then go visit Nana Ruth. Nana Ruth refers to Susie as a handsome man, which is so cute. Which makes Susie just like light up. Like, this is the beginning of like Susie's like queer character arc. Roz asks about how their family received the cutting. She says that their kin accused a woman for being a witch, and the witches of Greendale actually cursed the Walker women with blindness as revenge for falsely accusing a woman of being a witch. And so she doesn't know if it's the curse that gave them the cutting or if it's just brought out because of the curse. Like, she's not sure like why the cutting appeared. So Roz will be able to see stuff that other people aren't able to see. Of course, is like, well, witches aren't real, so how is that true? And her Nana doesn't even fight her on it because she's like, well, she doesn't know the truth yet, but she'll get there. Like, she just kind of is like, okay, believe what you want, I'm not gonna say anything. Sabrina gets back to her house and Harvey's there, and he like looks like he literally saw a ghost. She consoles him, and he tells her that they took him hunting and they wanted him to pull the trigger and he just couldn't do it, and so his grandpa was the one who shot the deer, not him. So Sabrina's like, okay, it wasn't you then. That puts Harvey in the clear of the blood for blood situation, because then he isn't the one that's guilty. And so she hugs him and then puts a protective charm on him. This comes up later. Lady Blackwood shows up and is downstairs in the morgue and is basically flipping out, and Sabrina is asked by Zelda to help her. Zelda thinks something is wrong with the pregnancy, so she asks Lady Blackwood when the last time she used an insane amount of magic was to like cause like stress on her, and she said that she had to do some stressful magic to protect her babies. Lady Blackwood then says that she thinks that the Weird Sisters are plotting against her and her children and trying to kill them, that they think that they can take away what belongs to her children, and she was the one who made Prudence queen, essentially. She doesn't like fully admit it, but she's like, I made sure Prudence was queen, so if I kill one of them, the others will be weak, useless without one another, essentially. Zelda and Sabrina are then talking, and Sabrina's like, is it possible that Blackwood could have other kids? And she's like, yeah, it's not uncommon for warlocks to have children out of wedlock, like that's a normal thing. Any high priest children, legitimate or not, can still claim the seat for being high priest. Sabrina then goes to Prudence and is like, hey, I think Lady Blackwood rigged this, so like you're not actually queen, like this was her doing, like she's trying to make sure that you die so you don't pose a threat to her kids for whatever reason. She's like, Lady Blackwood was the one holding the lottery box, so it is possible. And Sabrina pushes her to tell the truth, and Prudence finally is like, okay, well, if I do agree, like how are we going to figure this out for her to tell the truth? And Sabrina's like, every queen has a last supper. So on Thanksgiving, they invite the Blackwoods over, and Prudence and the Weird Sisters are there to their house before the Feast of Feasts. So the Blackwoods thank Prudence for the sacrifice, and they all sit down to eat dinner. Susie has a dream about Dorothea as they're looking through Dorothea's journals, and like Dorothea's like present in Susie's room, and it's like, hey girl, what's up? And Tommy are eating alone for Thanksgiving. Both his dad and his grandpa are passed out for being drunk. Wardwell is at home with her familiar and orders pizza and then murders the pizza delivery boy and eats him instead, because cannibalism is a common thing that exists in this show 7 episodes in. So Hilda had made a like huge cake. She's not present at the dinner because Zelda was like, well, I didn't think that you'd want like the excommunicated here to eat with us. So she's in the kitchen like making sure things are tip-top shape. She's making dessert, so like don't worry about her, she's fine. She brings out dessert and everybody has a piece of cake, and Lady Blackwood doesn't want any at first. She's like, I don't want to be full before the Feast of Feasts, but they all eat it. And Sabrina asks Blackwood why he reinstated the tradition of Feast of Feasts, and he says, well, the old ways are better. Lady Blackwood then states that she won't miss Prudence after she's gone, and claims that she's a stain and that they're better off without her. Of course, she doesn't mean to say that. She says it against her will. And then she calls Prudence a bastard, and Sabrina asks when the last time she cast a spell was, and Lady Blackwood admits to rigging the Feast of Feasts to make sure that Prudence was the one who got picked to get killed. Prudence is Father Blackwood's daughter. Surprise! Then Prudence is like, are you actually my dad? And he's like, yes, because he also ate the cake. The cake actually happened to be a truth cake. Says that he indirectly got her mother killed because he refused to marry her. Don't we just love the men in this show? It's so much fun. And so then the weird sisters are like, are you also our dad? And he's like, no, you're just orphans. Which is just, he says it so bluntly, which like, yeah, because he ate the truth cake, but like, it's just so fucking funny. So then he says that they have to draw for a new queen because Lady Blackwood tampered with it. So like, it's not actually true. It's not of the Dark Lord's will. But Prudence says she still wants to sit on the throne. But Sabrina offers him the ultimatum of, you cancel the Feast of Feasts and no one will find out about Lady Blackwood tampering with who gets picked. Prudence is like, I still want to sit on the throne because I'm queen. Like, you can't take that shit away from me. At the Feast of Feasts, Father Blackwood comes out and he's like, we can't eat Prudence. States that she can't be honored as queen, and the coven gets restless because they're like starving because none of them ate that day because they thought they were going to eat Prudence. A witch stands up. Her name is Mildred. She stands up. She slits her own throat and says, for Freya's honor, and then falls to the ground. Blackwood, in a very quick moment, is like, Mildred is the queen chosen by the Dark Lord himself. And so then the entire coven attack her body and eat her. I hate it. They're back at home, and Hilda gets a call from the mortuary that 2 bodies are being sent over, and it is a couple that committed suicide, and it's actually Connor's parents. They both took themselves out because they couldn't deal with the fact that their son was dead, which is really sad. Sabrina and Zelda get home from the Feast of Feasts because they were the only 2 that were there since Ambrose can't leave and Hilda is excommunicated. Sabrina asks Zelda when they get home if she would let them do to her what they did to Mildred. Zelda says no and is basically like, I don't want to talk about this, and goes upstairs. And end in the mines. So Harvey and Tommy are working in the mines on Black Friday. We then get a shot of Prudence coming across her 2 sisters at the school, and they claim that they are praying because she asks them what they're doing. They actually have voodoo dolls of both Tommy and Harvey, and they then smash their heads with rocks. And that is the end of episode 7. Ambrose and Sabrina are sitting in the living room the next morning, and Ambrose mentions Luke is trying to talk to Blackwood on his behalf in terms of his banishment and house arrest, trying to get his sentence either reduced or abolished because apparently Luke has like connections. Zelda asks where Hilda is because they have a bunch of bodies coming in, so like they need help. They get a call that there's been a mine accident. Sabrina runs off immediately because she's like, Harvey is there, something is wrong. She's frantically looking around for Harvey. There's a bunch of people getting help from medics, and she eventually finds him and he's being treated. Head's busted up pretty bad, and he tells her that Tommy is still inside the mines, trying to go find Tommy or his dad. Roz and Susie show up to try and find a way if they can help, and Harvey insists on getting up and being like, I'm fine, and goes back into the mines to try and find his brother like a dumbass. Comes back out later saying that it's not good inside, that it's like really bad, and that no one can fit through the hole to help because it's too small. Sabrina then asks him not to go back down there because even though she knows that his brother is down there, dude is literally bleeding everywhere. Like, his hand is cut, he has a gash in his fucking hand, probably a concussion, and she's like, hey, can you not go back down there please, because I don't want you to die. Like, okay, fine. Susie goes into the mines because they can fit into the tiny hole because they're small. Sabrina and Roz are both like, why did you go down there? And they're like, well, Dorothea told me to. And they're like, what are you talking about? Susie ends up finding a bloodied mine helmet that was Tommy's, and it's like dented and like really roughed up. Like, there's no way that he lived. It's not a good sign for Harvey, for his brother's well-being. Tommy is considered dead pretty much. And his dad shows up and basically tells everyone that isn't a worker of the mines or of like helping them to go home. Like, he appreciates the help, but like whatever. And Harvey's like, Dad, we can't leave. Like, his dad's like, we have to hold off the search until tomorrow. Keep digging because it's going to put a bunch of other people in jeopardy and at risk of also getting hurt, which like valid, but also like Harvey doesn't see it that way. He sees it as his dad abandoning his brother. Harvey then tells Sabrina that Tommy pushed him out of the way while everything was like falling down and when the mine began to collapse. And he says he was confused on how this tunnel stayed up long enough for him to get through, and because Sabrina put the protection charm on him the day before, that was the only reason why he was able to live. Harvey thinks it was Tommy that was the reason why he's living, and she like can't tell him otherwise because then she'll be having to explain the whole, you know, witch thing to him. Sabrina goes back home and ends up running into Hilda, who was at work all night because she said that Dr. C left the cafe open to help with volunteers and provide coffee and everything. And Zelda ushers them both inside and is very, very worried. Ambrose astral projected into the mines and that there were no survivors. So Tommy is dead. Sabrina wants to tell people, but Zelda tells her that they can't because the issue with getting involved with mortals as witches is that they have the ability to see certain things that witches can't, but they aren't also allowed to share that information because it wouldn't be possible physically for them to know. There's no way for them to make it make sense. Back at Harvey's house, his dad is talking to a banker. They're going over paperwork and he tells Harvey that they can't keep looking because it's going to put more men in danger, which is like a pretty valid take. Harvey then runs to Sabrina's house and says that they're having a funeral for Tommy tomorrow, even though they haven't found his body, because it's the only way his dad can collect the insurance money. Now at the witch school, and Nick asks the Weird sisters if they've seen Sabrina recently. They're like, oh, haven't you heard? A bunch of mortals got trapped in the mines and it's like really bad. Tommy's dead and the Kingles are witch hunters, and it's just like, oh no, karma. Prudence overhears Dorothea and Agatha saying this to Nick and is like super suspicious. She's like, there ain't no way they had anything to fucking do with this, but of course she knows that they did because they're her sisters. Sabrina talks to Hilda about how she's been brought back by Zelda with the like plot of dirt in their graveyard, and Hilda explains to her that the plot of soil from their graveyard was harvested from Cain's garden, and it's the most fertile soil on earth because it was fertilized with the blood of Eve. Hilda knows why she's asking about it, and she tells her that the soil doesn't work on mortals the same way that it works on witches. Let me guess what Sabrina's gonna try to do, what she's gonna try to get involved in, how she's gonna try to do this because Harvey's brother's dead. So they have the funeral for Tommy. The entire town basically shows up because one of their own was killed. Wardwell shows up and tells Sabrina that she feared the worst, and then Sabrina tells her that she put the protection spell on Harvey and that's the only reason why Harvey is alive. Like, Wardwell was banking on the fact that Harvey was going to die, so it would cut off Sabrina's connection to the mortal world, which is just like so fucked. Said she did it because she feared that the Weird sisters would retaliate, and Wardwell tells her that there's not a chance that they would do that. There's no way that they would do such a thing when it is exactly what happened. Speaks at the funeral and like can't, so Sabrina places a charm on him to make him feel confident, gives him the strength to speak. She's just placing spells on him left and right. Like, girl doesn't know when to stop. The whole speech is really sad. Like, it's just so upsetting because he like literally lost his brother who was like his one supporter and protected him against his dad, who's an alcoholic, so that's fun. Harvey's dad gets up and speaks and talks about how Tommy loved the mines and all of this shit, and of course Harvey gets pissed off and he's like, no, he didn't, because the spell that Sabrina put on him gives him the strength to talk even when he doesn't think he can, and so he of course goes against his dad. They fight, they then go outside. Roz picks up the helmet of Tommy's and has a vision, so she sees something but we don't see what that is yet. Harvey outside then blames himself for Tommy's death and shows Sabrina that years ago Tommy got an acceptance letter to college on a full ride but stayed because he wanted to make sure Harvey was okay. Dad comes outside and tells Harvey that he wishes it was Harvey who died and not Tommy. He then goes to go hit Harvey and Zelda comes outside and uses magic to hold his fist back and basically tells him that he needs to get his shit together and stop acting like this because they're at his son's funeral and there's no reason for him to be doing this. They go back inside and finish the funeral. Wardwell and Sabrina then go to the bookshop, diner, coffee place and talk about Harvey living with his dad and how Sabrina's like scared for him and how she doesn't think that he's going to be able to get through it, which like, girl, it's called grief. It's called grieving. Yes, he's not in the best situation, but like it's something that people experience and he'll be okay. Then brings up bringing Tommy back to life so Harvey doesn't have to deal with losing his brother, which is like, why is the first response to use necromancy the first solution to the problem? That should never be the solution to the problem. And Sabrina's like, well, as his girlfriend, I can't do anything, but as a witch, I can. No, the logic is not there. I need you to pause. You need to pause and stop. Reasonable solution is not to bring your boyfriend's dead brother back from the dead. Why is that the reasonable solution here? Hello, Sabrina, I need you to use your head for a second and stop thinking like you can solve every problem in the world with magic. That's not how this works. That's not why you're a witch. No. Isabel says that there are rules, and so like in order for her to do that, someone else would have to die to even the playing field. Eye for an eye. And she tells Sabrina about the Book of the Dead and that she has one in her office at school because of course, like she's encouraging her to do this because it's like all part of the plan. The necromancy, the bringing people back to life, the exorcism, all of it. It's all part of the devil's evil plan. Father Blackwood ends up showing up to the Spellman's house and he talks to Ambrose. He says that he looked into Ambrose's case because Luke asked him to, which like I didn't know Luke had that much pull with the high priest, but okay. We find out what Ambrose did and why he got banished in the first place and put on house arrest. When he was younger, his father died via witch hunters, and so for years he searched for a father figure who was devoted to the Dark Lord like his father was. And Ambrose said he was offered a deal of immunity if he gave up those who helped him, but he couldn't do it. Why he got banished was because he tried to blow up the Vatican with like other people, and he was the only one who got caught, and everyone else who was involved got away. The offer for immunity still stands as long as he gives up his co-conspirators, pretty much. Wood leaves. Zelda finds him and says that she needs spiritual guidance in the most seductive voice you could ask a person for that. I hated it. I hate the relationship. She gives a satanic confession in her living room and says that her family is straying too far from the path of night. He says that she has to prostrate herself to the Dark Lord. She says that she feels like she's running a halfway house for wayward witches and the excommunicated, which like, girl is being a little dramatic, but it's okay. She's failing, and then Blackwood tells her that the good thing about their Dark Lord is that he accepts their faults and knows that they're not perfect. So like he accepts their failures with open arms, unlike the false god, and he says he knows it well and true as well, and that Lady Blackwood has denied herself to him since she got pregnant, which like, yeah, she's pregnant, dumbass. They then make out and have on the floor of their living room. Susie wakes up in their room to see Dorothea and says that they were a very brave boy and that the Putnams have always been very brave, so like congratulating Susie on like going into the mines to see what's going on. Susie says that they did what she asked them to do and it was both scary and good. Harvey's avoiding Sabrina, which like valid, he's grieving his dead brother, so like I totally get it. And then Roz tells Sabrina about the vision of Tommy she had from his hard hat. She said she was in the mines and there were these two creepy girls that were in old-fashioned dresses playing with dolls and rocks, which is Agatha and Dorcas. And so then Roz says she thinks it's weird, but Sabrina is pissed off because she knows exactly who it is. Sabrina then summons Prudence to the woods without her sisters, and she says that she's seeking revenge and that they went after her boyfriend and his brother and 4 other mortals died, so like obviously bloodshed has been spilled, and so she's pissed off. And Prudence asks what she wants, and she says that she wants Tommy back and that Prudence owes her for the Lady Blackwood incident. Prudence and Sabrina go confront Agatha and Dorcas and tries to get them to admit it, and they do. Like, they don't even try to deny it, like they fully admit that they did this. And so Prudence continues to pressure them as to like why she wasn't included, and like gets pissed off. She's like, how dare you do anything without my say? And they tell her that they think that she's gone soft. Sabrina says that they're going to help her balance out the scales, a life for a life, to bring Tommy back. So she's one of the weird sisters to get her boyfriend's dead brother back. Lovely, awesome, amazing. They tell Sabrina that she doesn't have the guts to kill one of them. Prudence is like, yeah, she might, but I do, so fuck you both, because how dare you go against me. Dorcas throws Agatha under the bus immediately, like there's zero hesitation. Agatha's like, yeah, I did. Didn't I regret that both of them didn't die, and Sabrina slaps her clean in the face. It's a very crisp slap. So she's like, well, we're going to be doing the resurrection and the sacrifice tonight, and Nick is like, a resurrection? A sacrifice? Count me in. I'm like, dude, get away. He's like, can I watch? Like a creep. I don't like him in this season. He tells her that she's going to need a Book of the Dead, and Sabrina's like, yeah, I know, I can get one. Do you think I've never done this before? She hasn't, but she then breaks into her school at night, breaks into Wardwell's office, and steals the Book of the Dead without Wardwell knowing. At midnight in the woods, they all meet up, and Agatha's crying and gagged. They form a pentagram, and then Nick suggests Sabrina recites it word for word, because if she messes up in any way, all of them will die. They all conduct the rite of resurrection. Sabrina stands behind Agatha, and she seems to doubt herself, and then she just cleanly slices Agatha's throat open. Kind of terrifying, but Nick looks so turned on, it makes me want to fucking rip my hair out. He looks like he wants to absolutely make out with her. Can you keep it in your pants for 2 fucking seconds, please? I need you to calm down. I need murder not to make you horny, okay? Dorcas doesn't understand what the hell is going on because she thinks that Sabrina just murdered Agatha and doesn't understand what's happening. Ambrose comes outside and he is livid. He is so pissed off. He yells at Sabrina, claiming that this is the stupidest thing she's ever done, which at this point it is. She does do dumber shit later though, so it's not. And so Sabrina says she did it for Harvey, and Ambrose is like, okay, that doesn't mean you can bring people back from the dead. Everything comes with a price, and that death magic is the most potent of it all. And she said that she followed it to the letter and used Agatha because it said nothing about the murdered sacrifice having to stay dead. Which, girl, it's implied. Do you think that that's just going to go over smoothly? Girl lives in denial. Ambrose is like, why do you insist on testing the universe on everything? That's it. That's the entirety of Sabrina's character. She thinks she can get anything that she wants whenever she wants, and there will be no consequences to her actions. He also tells her that she disrupted the natural order of things because, she did. That's exactly what she did, and I have zero sympathy for her. Of course, she pushes back. Not long after him yelling at her, Agatha does climb out of the ground and has no idea what happened, and Dorcas also has no idea what the fuck happened because she thinks that Sabrina was a murderer. Prudence tells Agatha that actions have consequences, and if her actions could have exposed them, and if she ever does something like that again, she'll make sure she's actually dead. Hilda is love lusted, girl is acting all silly in the kitchen, and Hilda's hella suspicious of her. She has a situationship with Father Blackwood. Sabrina then asks Roz about the vision. Can I help you? He's just gonna exist here right now. Okay. Sabrina asks Roz about the vision, and Roz explains what Nana Ruth told her about being cursed by witches and everything. Sabrina doesn't confirm or deny anything because she can't. Blackwood then arrives to get an answer from Ambrose for his decision, and Ambrose stands on business and is like, I cannot give up the names of my co-conspirators. And Blackwood is like, I'm glad you said that. And Ambrose is very confused. He basically says that Ambrose not giving up the names gives him integrity, loyalty, and honor, which is what they should prize in the church, and that he can't lift the sentence, but he can lessen it by having Ambrose work with him at the school, which would count as community service, which would then lessen his sentence as a whole, and that they will work together to give him complete freedom. Zelda is waiting for Blackwood and then leads her to her bedroom, and she shows him a double-headed snail and calls it the Snips and Snails, and says that he's having 2 twin sons, and he's ecstatic of this. And she goes to kiss him, and he kind of rejects her and claims that she has forgotten herself and says that they only hooked up because of that confession. There was no other reason. But then he's like, I will show you penance, and 30 lashes would suffice and also strengthen her. And he's like, I'll do yours if you'll do mine. Zelda's is so horny. It's actually insane. Harvey's finally back at school, and Sabrina tells him a miracle could happen. Not to give up hope. He obviously is like, there is no hope. My brother's dead. I hate the world. Yeah, he's grieving. Sabrina then goes back to the woods to find Tommy at the place where she did the resurrection. Doesn't find him there. And Ambrose tells her that the soul returns to wherever the body was left. He doesn't just appear out of nowhere. She says the right didn't say anything about that, and he's like, well, no fucking shit, dumbass. Goes off on her for not knowing what she's doing. Sabrina then runs to the mines to find the wooden barrier that they put up to block it off was completely broken. While Harvey and his dad are home, they hear a thumping at the door. Who could that be? We're now in episode 9. Sabrina shows up to Harvey's house, and Harvey says that Tommy's back and that he's doing great, and the doctor checked him out. He says that he's shocked and not talking or eating or acting like himself, and Sabrina asks to see him, but is completely denied. His dad just kind of like closes the door, and then she's like, okay, I'll go home. Zelda's out hooking up with her boo thing in disguise of a satanic confession. I hate their entire relationship, not because it's just weird and uncomfortable, but also just the way that their relationship degrades Zelda's character later on in the seasons, which we will get into. Completely transforms her into the worst version of her character, and they did her so dirty. Plays a role later on in the show. Father Blackwood is like, we have to keep this a secret. Well, like, no shit, your pregnant wife with twins is going to find out. Like, you suck. Blackwood then asks Zelda to be his children's night mother, which is godparent essentially, but because they don't say the word God because they don't believe in God, it's night mother. Anyway, his reasoning for asking her though is because he doesn't think that Lady Blackwood would be the mother that his children need. Which, like, why the did you marry her and get her pregnant in the first place, you weirdo? Also asks her to take over Lady Blackwood's classes at the academy because she's too fatigued. And Zelda's like, oh my god, my life is perfect. Like, or oh my not god, my life is perfect. Sabrina then tells Ambrose Tommy's back home and he's fine. And of course, Ambrose doesn't believe her because he's like, there's no way that he's perfectly fine. And she's like, of course he's weary, in shock. And she's like, and he's not eating. And Ambrose is like, what do you mean he's not eating? That's not good. Like, you need to tell our aunties before they find out because news is going to travel fast. And Hilda especially will know what will happen because she told Sabrina specifically not to do this. She told her, hey, don't bring your boyfriend's dead brother back to life. Like, Tommy's gonna be fine. Like, he's gonna be fine. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Like, he'll be fine. It's just gonna take some time. Like, obviously, he just came back from the dead. Back at the academy, Agatha gets sick and she starts choking up soil up on her bed. Nick then shows up in Sabrina's room unprompted. He's just there. Again, weirdo behavior. Salem is yelling at him, which, like, good. Not actually there. He's just astral projecting, and he's like, hey, Agatha's sick, coughing up grave dirt. And he asks how Tommy's doing. She's like, Tommy's fine. Tommy's okay. And he's like, you're not a good liar. Has anyone told you that you're not good at lying? He's like, oh, you must love him a lot if you're, like, willing to, like, fucking sacrifice a witch. She tells Salem to go watch over Harvey and Tommy to make sure the situation's fine, and he doesn't want to, and she's like, just go. He, though, is acting really weird. He's just, like, scratching on the mirror, and Harvey pulls up a picture book of them, and they're looking at old pictures of Tommy, and he's not responding or really moving or doing anything, and he does, like, scratch a photo of himself with his finger like this, and it's just weird. And Salem's in the corner watching them. Susie is still talking to Dorothea in their room. It appears like they're talking to themselves, and something about Susie getting grounded if they try to do something, but we don't know what that is yet. Hilda then, back at the Spellmans, gets a call that all of the miners' bodies have been recovered and they will be sending them soon. And Zelda asks how Harvey's been coping. She also shares the news that she's at the academy now. And Ambrose says that he will help handle the bodies for Hilda to cover up the fact that Tommy's body won't be there, and so Sabrina won't be able to lie. Sabrina then tries to return the Book of the Dead to Wardwell's office, and Wardwell catches her, asks Sabrina if she felt like the shift in the air the other night, and Sabrina plays dumb. Wardwell's playing dumb, and it's like, you can borrow it if you ask. And Sabrina lies and says she was looking for the wrong book and asking to borrow it, runs away with a different one. Then Roz asks Sabrina if it's true that Tommy's alive and claims it to be the opposite of a blessing. She's like, maybe it's not a good thing. This could be a very bad thing because he was supposed to be dead. And she says that she had a really bad dream and heard a horrible sound in the snowy woods, and it was dogs walked deeper into the woods and saw these, like, hounds fighting over Tommy's body. Sabrina then tells her she thinks that there's something wrong with Tommy and asks Roz if she can help figure out what it is and, like, use her visions to find out what's wrong with Tommy. Back at the academy, Father Blackwood gives Ambrose his own familiar, and it's a little mouse named Leviathan, which is actually kind of cute, and he's on his first day of the academy, and tells him that Luke has been helping him reform the coven. He then leaves. Ambrose and Luke start making out, and Prudence, Nick, and Dorcas come in and tell them about Agatha vomiting up the Spellman soil, and Nick tells him that Sabrina said that Tommy's fine, so, like, it makes no sense if Tommy's fine. And Ambrose says that he can get someone to help them because he doesn't know much about the pit, but he does know Hilda knows more about the pit, so he calls her. And then Susie's at the coffee shop trying to shoplift a book, which is going back to the conversation that Susie was having with Dorothea in their room about like getting grounded, which it's like, yeah, you're stealing. Susie's trying to shoplift a book and then gets stopped by the two jocks that we saw bullying Susie earlier in the show. And Hilda recognizes Susie as one of Sabrina's friends, so she uses her witch magic to like freak Billy out. And then she also says that his jock friend is like in lust for him. Gay jocks, love that. Anyway, they run away and Hilda tries to say something to Susie, but then Susie also runs away because they're embarrassed that they got caught for stealing. Ambrose then calls Hilda at the coffee shop and then tells her that she needs to come by, so she goes to the academy. And she explains that the reason why Agatha is like feeling ill is because if you come up too early, you get sick, and they need to balance out her other elements with like fizzy water and like fire and shit. In the hall, she tells Ambrose that something is seriously wrong. Like, she just had to say that to keep them occupied so they wouldn't like flip their lids. Says that the reason why Agatha's like throwing up gravel is because a soul is owed. Like, the debt has not been paid, the balances are not equal. All because Sabrina tried to get a 2-for-1 in a resurrection. Like, girl, what did you think? This isn't a buy one, get one free. What did you think was going to happen when you brought Agatha back from the dead? Freaking Ambrose told her that and she just refused to listen. And so Ambrose tells Hilda everything that happened because he's like, I'm not saving her. I'm not saving her. I told her not to do this. She did it anyway. It's her funeral. Roz and Sabrina go visit Tommy and Harvey at the Kinkles' house. And Sabrina distracts Harvey and is like, hey, you should go give Tommy some soup. And so he leaves the room and Roz grabs Tommy's hands and has a vision pretty much immediately. She's in the woods and there's like fog and she can hear babies crying and Tommy is like wandering around and he looks really lost. A witch comes up behind her with Sabrina's voice and scares her, and then Roz is out of the vision. His dad comes home and is immediately hostile with them. He's like, what the fuck are you doing here? Why are you here? And Harvey's like, they're just trying to check on Tommy. Sabrina asks what Roz saw and she tells her about the witch, but she doesn't tell her about the witch part. Susie keeps talking to Dorothea at home. Dorothea asks Susie about the situation that's going on with Tommy and if the Spellmans are still witches. She like implies that the Spellmans are witches. So confused. She doesn't know what the hell Dorothea is talking about. Sabrina goes back home and realizes that she brought back Tommy's body but not his soul, so she has to retrieve his soul. She says it out loud thinking she's talking to Ambrose, but it's actually Hilda that's behind her, and Hilda tells her that Ambrose told her everything, and she scolds Sabrina, and Sabrina's like, no, like I just have to go get Tommy's soul and like transcend the realms and go into this realm that humans and witches are not supposed to be in. And Hilda tries to be like, well, witches can't. She's like, well, I'm half and half, so I'm not even a full witch, so it doesn't matter, and I didn't sign my name in the Book of the Beast, so I'm not a full witch, I don't have my full powers, so technically I can still go. And Hilda's like, okay, like whatever, like at this point, like fine, go into the soul realm and try to get Tommy's soul. Always trying to fucking push the limits. And Hilda tells her that there's no fixing it and that the Grim Reaper is going to either take Tommy or Agatha or both. Like there needs to be repayment. Hilda's conducting the choir at school. Agatha stumbles in looking like she just came from the fucking Exorcist. Girl looks rough. Blackwood then demands what happened and Prudence tells them what Sabrina did, basically just like throws Sabrina fully under the bus. They put her in the cane pit and she tried to bring back Mortal and blah blah blah. And Zelda's like, I had no idea this was happening. And Father Blackwood's like, what the hell? Like, this is your kin. He says that he's going to go fix it, and Zelda's like, no, I will go fix it because she is my responsibility. Like, I will go deal with it. Turns to Prudence, Dorcas, and Nick and is basically like, Tommy has to die and you guys are going to make sure that happens. He's also like, take her to the infirmary, which is where you should have brought her in the first place. What is wrong with you? Ambrose shows Hilda and Sabrina that there are human bite marks on the other miners' bodies, which, like, cool! Zombie apocalypse in Greendale. We love to see it. And he says that Tommy hasn't eaten yet because he hasn't gotten hungry, so alluding to the fact that Tommy is going to, like, wake up and try to eat Harvey. Love that that's something that could happen. Okay, anyway, back at the Kinkles, Harvey's dad is drunk as hell because he always is, and he's accusing Tommy of not being Tommy and calls him a zombie and claims it's not his son. He ends up hitting Harvey, and then Tommy, like, kind of reacts and tries to strangle their dad to death. Sabrina shows up with some liquid in a jar and gives it to Tommy, and it sends him right to sleep. And Harvey's finally like, there's something wrong with him. That's not my brother. Something's wrong. Something's going on. Sabrina tells him that if Tommy tries to hurt him, to run as far away as possible. She gets back home and Zelda is pissed off. She is pissed off because now she knows what Sabrina has been doing. She accuses Sabrina of acting recklessly, which she has been. They try to like get you to sympathize with the fact that like Sabrina's like put herself in this position, but it's hard for me to do so when none of this would be happening if she just didn't get involved. Like if she just didn't do the thing she was told not to do, this wouldn't be a problem and she wouldn't be getting yelled at. You made a mistake, like this is your mess, you need to clean it up. And that's essentially what Zelda's telling her. Zelda asks her how she knew what spell to use, and Sabrina's like, well, it was a book in Wardwell's office and Wardwell told me about it. Sabrina still doesn't think she did anything wrong. She's like, well, I just have to go get Tommy's soul back. Zelda's like, fine, you do that, but when this all blows up in your face, do not come crying to me. Also tries to blame Agatha and Dorcas for this entire situation because they got involved and tried to kill Tommy in the first place, so like it's actually their fault. And it's like, no babe, this situation is fully on you because you insisted on bringing your boyfriend's dead brother back to life when you were told not to do that. You don't have the skills to do that, and also you tried to cheat the system. Zelda's like, I'm gonna kill him myself and make sure he's back in the ground because you made this fucking mess. And Sabrina's like, but I can bring his soul back. And Zelda's like, no, that's not the solution to the problem. That's only gonna make things worse. He has to die. Yells at her and tells her to stop acting like her mother, and that's when Hilda like gets involved and she's like, how dare you talk to your aunt like that, like we care about you, whatever. And Zelda's like, fine, no, she's right, I'm not her mom, I can't tell her what to do, so when this blows up in your face, don't come crying to me because I don't want to hear it because you made this fucking mess yourself, so you clean it up. Just single-handedly like tore the family apart because Ambrose won't help her, Hilda's definitely not gonna help her, Zelda's not gonna help her, so she's on her own. So who does she turn to for witch stuff if no one in her family will help her? Miss Wardwell. Ding ding ding. She apologizes for stealing the book and then lying about not using it. She doesn't apologize for bringing Tommy back to life. She's like, I'm not sorry for that. I don't regret that at all, even though that's the whole reason why I'm in this mess in the first place. Don't care. She said that she didn't want to see Harvey suffer when it's literally just grieving. Like, he was just going through the motions of grief. He would have been okay if you didn't get involved and like bring him back and then have to take him away again, which made it like 10 times worse. Like, you didn't have to do that. Tells her that souls are trapped in this realm that like humans and witches aren't supposed to go into, and that if they do get caught, they're like running from what's called a soul eater, and if they get caught by the soul eater, they completely like cease to exist. And she tells her that there's a portal in the woods that she knows about, and they have to act fast because any failure would result in Tommy's death, obviously. Hilda then goes upstairs and walks in to find Zelda whipping herself. Zelda says they're in the wrong for taking Sabrina in and not letting Diana's family take her. Hilda basically tells her that's not the case and like comforts her because Zelda thinks that she's a failure because of all the actions that Sabrina has taken, and she's like, I've never been able to tell Sabrina no. And Hilda's like, that's all you've told her. She just chooses not to listen, which is true. So Blackwood then tells the sister that Tommy is a soulless husk and needs to die. The more that he continues to exist, the more he continues to risk exposing them. Nick overhears them and follows the sisters to the Kinkle's house and roots them in place with a charm via their shadows. And he says that Spellmans are handling it and he will stay there with them until it is done. Like, he's like, you're not getting involved in this. Let Sabrina figure this out. And it's like, why would you have that much faith in her, man? You shouldn't. Like, there's no fucking way. Like, that's crazy. Sabrina and Wardwell go into the woods, and Wardwell ties a red string to her wrist, and she holds the ball in her hand. She's like way too excited at the possibility of Sabrina just like ruining everything. While in limbo, Sabrina sees a bunch of souls. She actually runs into her mom and is like, why the fuck is my mom here? Does she have some unfinished business? Like, what's going on? And so then she ends up seeing Tommy. The leader appears and they go to run back, and she then pulls on the string and the string falls back, and so she's trying to get back to Wardwell, and as they're crossing over into the realm, the soul eater catches up and eats Tommy's soul. He's gone. Like, there's no recovering him. There's no way to handle this. And so Sabrina's like, well, now I don't know what to do. And Wardwell's like, you tell Harvey the truth. She tells her that if their love is pure and everything, then it's fine. Like, then he'll understand. He'll get it. He won't. But Wardwell knows that because she wants to tear Sabrina and Harvey apart. So Susie and Roz are at the diner talking about what her Nana said, and that Roz says that she's seen a secret about Sabrina and she thinks Sabrina's a witch, and Susie's like, no, I agree with you. Because my Aunt Dorothea wrote about the Spellmans being a witch in her journals. Question if like that means if Sabrina's evil or dangerous. Dangerous, yes. Evil, no. Just careless. I think she just like has no idea what the fuck she's doing. Yeah, she's a danger to like everyone around her because she just makes poor decisions and takes no accountability. But Wardwell's there overhearing everything because of course she is. Sabrina goes back to Harvey's and she says she has to tell him something and that she can't hide it from him anymore. She says that Tommy isn't actually Tommy and that he did die in the mines and she brought him back and that she's a witch. Harvey's like, wait, you've told me this before. Like, you've said this to me. And she's like, yeah, I did when we were in the woods before my birthday and I made you forget and did a charm on you to make you forget. He asks why she would do that and she was like, I wanted you to stop hurting. He's like, that wasn't your call to make. Like, that wasn't your decision. He asks if it will hurt and how she will do it because she says that she has to kill Tommy. And then he's like, actually, I don't want you to do it. I'm gonna do it. And he tells her to leave and essentially breaks up with her and is like, you need to go. Like, you need to leave. Like, you've done enough. Harvey goes to the front of the house and takes one of the guns out of the gun cabinet that's at the front door. And then as we see her leaving the house and she walks past Prudence and Dorcas, you hear the gunshot go off and Nick is there too. And they're just like, is it done? And so Sabrina goes back home and has a breakdown and Zelda comes outside and actually comforts her because all of Sabrina's mistakes just caught up to her in the end, because that's how that happens. Now we're on the final episode. I say final in quotes because there are 11 episodes, but I'm not going to go into episode 11 in too deep. Anyway, and with Warbell, she's like narrating this entire episode, like talking about her big evil plan and whatever. It's about how Sabrina takes the last step in the Dark Lord's plan, and the signs were there for anyone who was looking for it. So it would be a dead bird brought in by a cat, a spilled black ink bottle, a broken mirror in an empty room, a loaf of bread split down the middle, a blind woman knitting her own death shroud, aware of what is to come. Roz tells her Nana that she's starting to see things and she thinks Sabrina Spellman is a witch. Her Nana tells her it's possible. That's a possibility. Questions if the curse was given to them by Spellman and she's like, no. And her Nana Ruth tells her that Sabrina is not the one that she should be afraid of, that Sabrina's not the evil one. And Roz is like, well, how do I know? And she's like, well, you know your friend. You be able to tell. Like, you would know if she's evil or not, and I don't think she's the one you need to worry about right now. Alluding to the fact that Wardwell is actually the one that's evil and needs to be taken care of. And Ruth says that the cunning told her Sabrina is not the witches she needs to fear, and that the 13 witches are coming, the wrath of Satan. So the Greendale 13 pops up yet again. Zelda asks where Sabrina is, and Amber says she's been in her room for the last few days. She's just moping because she is dealing with heartbreak and the fact that she basically ruined her boyfriend's life. So Hilda makes her a broken heart bomb to help her with it. Zelda then goes upstairs and tells Sabrina she has to go to school, and Sabrina's like, well, what if I see him? I'll be okay, and you'll be okay, and it takes time, and you'll be fine. And they have a very sweet moment, and she basically tells her that she needs to go. So Sabrina does end up going to school that day. Pretty much immediately sees Harvey and just like runs into the bathroom, and when she runs into the bathroom, Susie and Roz are there. So she's just like, I ask her what's going on, and she says she's lying. She's like, I'm just not feeling good. And then Susie just like outright asks her that if she's a witch or not, and Sabrina tries to lie, and it just doesn't work. And Roz is like, don't. Says that she saw a vision, and Susie admits the Dorothea thing, and so she just tells them everything. She tells them that she brought Tommy back, that she tried to explain everything to Harvey, that Harvey broke up with her, and that like he's like super mad at her, and she just like starts to have a breakdown. She's like, everything's ruined, and she starts crying, and they actually just like, they comfort her, they forgive her, and they're like, she apologizes, and she's like, I never wanted to lie to you, and they're like, Sabrina, it's okay, like we're here for you no matter what. And Wardwell's in one of the stalls listening because she thinks that Susie and Roz are gonna dump Sabrina and be like, okay, you freak, and that would motivate Sabrina to fully become a witch because she's finally lost all. No, Roz and Susie have hearts bigger than they should, but I get it, like they love her. They're her friend. Because it didn't go the way Wardwell thought it was going to, she creates a problem for Sabrina to solve, to potentially tear apart Sabrina and her mortal friends. Like, she's hell-bent on getting them separated. She does not want Sabrina to be friends with these people. Summons the 13 witches, the Greendale 13, which are the 13 witches that were hanged by the Greendale years ago. Does this by a virgin jock from the high school, and she gives them permission to walk the earth again and get revenge on Greendale for killing them, then asks them to summon the butcher to ensure the end of Greendale once and for all. Sabrina then goes to the academy and tells Nick she was sorry about how everything went. Prudence is of course like super cocky about it, and then Sabrina tells Nick that she was devastated after Harvey broke up with her, but then he says like, I envy you, because like he's aware of the fact that she loves him so much, yet he still tries to shoot his shot every time. Like, I'm jealous jealous because witches can't be like that because the Dark Lord is a jealous god, and so he wants witches to love him and only him and no one else. Like, he as a witch can't devote himself to someone romantically the same way she can to Harvey. And she's like, you could try. And they're standing in front of the giant Dark Lord statue and it starts to just bleed, and they're like, oh, that can't be good. Hilda is at the coffee shop and she feels a shift in the energy, and you see these witches roam past the store while she's talking to Dr. C. They then make their way to the Church of Night as Father Blackwood is there. Book he was using catches fire. So Dorothea wakes Susie up in the middle of the night, and Susie looks outside and sees the Greendale 13, a circle like in Susie's backyard. It's all 13 of them in like the woods. Dorothea tells Susie that these 13 witches are actually some of the women that she brought to Greendale to live freely. Like, those were the women that she helped. So and Ambrose are wandering around outside trying to bone, and as they're walking, Ambrose hears the voices of the Greendale 13, and they're gathered by a fire, and Luke says it looks like they're doing a summoning spell and that they should leave, and Luke questions if they're actually there for like part of their coven, and Ambrose is like, well, if they're witches, we should talk to them, and Luke is like, I don't think that's a good idea. And he was right. Go to investigate, and then Ambrose finds a figure but of this like guy on a horse and is choked out by a witch, and she tells Ambrose to deliver the message to their high priest of what is going to come. Sabrina is at school. She approaches Harvey in the library drawing, and she asks how he's doing, and he says that his dad is taking it much worse, and he lied to his dad and said that Tommy was the one who himself, They then took Tommy's body to the funeral home in the neighboring town of Riverdale. Oh my gosh, I told you it was coming up again. He says it all kind of makes a little bit more sense now that he knows that she's a witch. Like, he kind of understands certain things about her. He could never hate her, but every time he looks at her, all he sees is his brother, which is like, yeah, valid. She brought your dead brother back from the dead and then made you kill him. Hilda appears out of nowhere. She's astral projecting into the library and tells Sabrina that she needs to go to the Church of Night immediately because Father Blackwood called an emergency meeting in the middle of the day. Blackwood tells them that he witnessed an omen, and as he's saying this, Ambrose bursts in and says, it was not an omen from the Dark Lord, it's the Greendale 13, and they're coming, and they summon the Angel of Death, and the Angel of Death is going to come through Greendale and kill the firstborn of every mortal and witch in Greendale, and there's just going to be like a massacre. Blackwood promises to protect them, and Hilda questions how, and he says that he's basically gonna like have them all held up in the academy working together with a protection charm to protect them from the Angel of Death, so the entire coven will be protected. And then Sabrina's like, well, what about the mortals? And he's like, let them pray to their false god and hope that they live. Think Sabrina's gonna take that as an answer? No, obviously not, because she refuses to let go of the mortal world. My light died, so I had to get another one. Sabrina asks why the Greendale 13 would be mad at them. To explain the history of the Greendale 13 and why they would be mad at the witches in Greendale. And so essentially what happened was the Greendale 13 were sacrificed by the coven because so many mortals were trying to like identify witches and figure out who's a witch and whatever. And so it was only 13 of them that were rounded up. And so the coven made the executive decision to let the 13 witches be executed to save the rest of the coven, because they could have saved them. But if they did that, they then would have exposed the entire coven to the town of Greendale, and then all of them would have died. So they were kind of like using them to save their own necks, which is why they hate them. Valid. I would totally understand why they would be pissed. Like, I get it. But Sabrina is like, I'm not abandoning my friends to let them die. Like, that's just not happening. Zelda actually agrees to help Sabrina defend the town. And this is when Hilda's like, well, Mr. C said that when there was a tornado coming through Greendale, they would all go and be in the basement of Baxter High, because that would be the safest place. So then the four of them summon a tornado into Greendale, which then causes the entire town to go to the bunker at school, so the four of them can put the protection charm on the school like Blackwood is doing at the academy. People who aren't there though, Sabrina is at the school, runs into Susie, and Susie says that she hasn't seen Roz or Harvey. So Susie agrees to go find Roz, and Sabrina agrees to go get Harvey. But back at the Academy of Unseen Arts, the witches are all getting prepared for what is about to happen, and so they do. Luke then points out that none of the Spellmans are there, and Blackwood doesn't seem to really give a shit. He's like, okay, that's their funeral. I don't give a fuck. They made their choice. I'm gonna make them live up to it. Sabrina goes to Harvey's. He's basically like, we're not going. Like, we have a bunker here. There's no reason for us to shelter in place at the school. And she's like, well, it's not a tornado. And he's like, it's witch shit, isn't it? And she's like, yeah, it is. He's also like, my dad is in no shape to travel. So he doesn't believe her because he really has no reason to believe her that she's trying to keep him safe. I'm not even gonna try to say that he's wrong because he's not. He is completely valid in that. So she leaves. She's like, fine, whatever. Obviously, she doesn't abandon him. At Roz's, Susie shows up and her Nana has refused to leave, and Susie tells them that they have to go because a tornado is coming, and Nana Ruth's like, a tornado isn't fucking coming. You think I'm dumb? We can see everything. I'm a Walker woman with a cunning. Because Nana Ruth refuses to leave, Roz refuses to leave her. Nick shows up at Harvey's house to protect him, and Sabrina said that she was calling in a favor, and that favor was Nick to protect Harvey. The lover boys are in contact. He shows up and Harvey's like, who the hell are you? And he's like, I'm Sabrina's friend. Harvey's like, what kind of friend? What kind of friend are you? Still obviously loves her. He's just mad at her. Witching hour is when the 13 show up to Baxter High, which is at midnight. The witching hour is midnight. And while the Spellmans are using their magic to protect the school, the academy is also using their magic to protect the academy. And Harvey and Nick is using his magic to protect Harvey's house, and Harvey has a gun. What that's going to do, I don't know, but it's going to do something, he thinks. He's like real sassy with Nick about it, and he's like, well, what are you even doing? He's like, I'm doing the thing, like, I'm making you shut up, farmer boy. Like, he calls him farmer boy, which I think is so funny because it continues in the rest of the show. And he's like, I can't believe Sabrina loves you. Dude, like, they just broke up like a day ago. Like, I need you to chill. At Roz's house, a witch shows up and blows the door open, and Susie steps in forward and is like, I am the descendant of Dorothea Putnam, and she gave you life and brought you to this world, and you should not harm these people because I'm friends with them and I care about them, whatever. And she goes on a whole thing. Sabrina, Hilda, Zelda, and Ambrose are at Baxter High trying to protect the school and doing the charm there. In the middle of the protection spell, Father Blackwood summons Zelda away from Baxter High, leaving the three of them at the school to fend for themselves because Lady Blackwood has gone into labor. The perfect moment, which is significantly early because she hasn't been pregnant for 13 months. That much time has not passed. Ambrose also disappears because Luke summoned him to the school, and he's like, I can't let you die. I love you. And it's like, dude, now is not the time for your gay asses to fucking confess that you love each other. The people are gonna die. And Ambrose is pissed, and he's like, and Luke is like, you can't leave because I bound you to the school, because I won't let you die, because I love you. Can't get mad at me because I love you. Bigger picture here, please, okay? Ambrose made his choice. The choice was to protect mortals. You don't get to play the I love you card. Like, now is not the time. It's just so dramatic for no reason. Brina and Hilda are the only ones left at their school to protect it, and Hilda's like, well, I don't know if we can do this. Wardle shows up and tries to convince Sabrina that they need to fight back, and so she takes her away from Hilda. So Hilda is by herself to go and protect the school alone. And so it's all part of Wardle's plan, obviously, to get Sabrina to go away. And so she takes Sabrina to the woods to sign her name into the Book of the Beast, because it's the final step in Wardle's plan. And she tells her that in order for her to save all of Greendale, she needs to sign her name to the Book of the Beast in order to get the power that she needs to become a full witch, to then have that ability to save them. While they're there, they hear the Angel of Death arrive, and Sabrina is like, okay. And she signs her name in the Book of the Beast, and Satan is like, okay, you're doing my bidding now. So then she's like, I know what I have to do. And they go back to the hanging tree, where Sabrina bit into the Malice, the apple. When she saw the witches burning from the hanging tree, she realizes she needs to burn the tree down. And Wardwell's like, well, you can't do that because the only way that you can do that is summon hellfire, and only 3 other witches have been able to do that. And Sabrina's like, well, I have to fucking try. As that is happening, Lady Blackwood is bleeding too much, and while she's giving birth, and Zelda is like, oh god, oh shit, and puts the baby aside. And Prudence is actually the one helping her, because Zelda told Father Blackwood that he couldn't be present at a time like this, and she needed help, and that help would be Prudence. Susie looks as the witch leaves, but the witch is not leaving because Susie sent it away. The witch is leaving because the Angel of Death is showing up, so it doesn't get better. He then shows up to where Nick and Harvey is, and Harvey's like, I'm not the firstborn, but my dad is. And Nick's like, Okay, well, guess we're gonna have to figure that out. And at the hanging tree, Sabrina demands all 13 of the witches to stop and to go in peace or face her wrath. So then they all appear. And then she summons the fire of hell, burn the witches at the tree. And they all go up in flames, in these blue flames. The whole tree and the witches start to burn. And then Sabrina's hair turns silver. The witches burn. The angel of death is going up to Baxter High, where Hilda is by herself trying to protect it. And he eventually just disappears. Sabrina saved Greendale, yippee! Nick and Harvey look out, and Nick's like, your girlfriend just saved all of Greendale, by the way. And Harvey's like, we're not dating. He's like, well, she loves you a lot, so you better reassess that, because I'll take her away from you if you don't. Lady Blackwood has died, so Father Blackwood enters, and Zelda says to him that the male twin absorbed the other twin in the womb, and so he only has one heir. But it's a boy, so it's fine. It says she was too weak to bring the babies into the world, which is why she died. Roz's Nana Ruth also dies, so R.I.P. Nana Ruth, she's gone. I loved her. Hilda is walking back home with Dr. C. They're talking, and she kisses Dr. C, and it's real sweet. But as he's walking away, we see his eyes turn yellow. That's a plot point for next season. Not gonna get an answer now. Okay, you gotta wait. But his eyes turn like kind of yellow. He's like all like giddy and happy, and then it's like, oh, fuck, there's something wrong with him. After she gets home, we learned there were 2 babies. And the firstborn was not a boy, it was a girl. And Zelda took her. Zelda kidnapped a baby that wasn't hers and took it home and was like, we could raise her as our own. Blackwood has his son. He names him Judas, and all of the men in the coven all hail Judas. It's very weird. It's very weird. Sabrina shows up in Harvey's room. Her hair is silver instead of just regular blonde. Harvey tells her thank you for sending Nick over to save him, and that he told him that she saved the town. And Sabrina apologizes and he says he knows that she's sorry and that they can start over. Sabrina's like, I don't think that's a good idea, because she just summoned the fires of hell to burn a bunch of witches, and so she thinks she's like incredibly dangerous, which like, yeah, girl, you're way too powerful to be with a mortal man. She says that she loves him, but it's too much of a risk to put him in danger. That, I think, is one of the only valid things she has done. Willing to resurrect his dead brother, but dating him again, knowing that she is all powerful now, is the line. That's the line. Okay. He's like, can I get one last kiss? And she kisses him and then disappears, like literally into the wind. She's gone. We find out that the person that Wardwell was talking to at the beginning of this episode was actually Principal Hawthorne, and she's like explaining everything to him, and he's like, who the fuck are you? And she's like, my name is Lilith, the mother of all demons. So Sabrina called upon the power of Lilith during the exorcism. She was right there. She was helping, actually. She's like, if I do the Dark Lord's bidding, then I will become the Queen of Hell. She's doing this because she wants to be the Queen of Hell and be by the Dark Lord's side as his queen. Harvey tells Roz and Susie, like, hey, Sabrina's a witch. And they're like, yeah, we know. Well, it's still her. Like, she's still Sabrina. And they're like, well, do you think she'll come back? And they're like, I don't know. She'll return to Baxter High as a mortal when she's a witch who can summon hellfire. We'll see. But then back at the academy, and we see Sabrina walking in slow motion with the Weird Sisters and her new silver hair, and she sees Nick, and that is the official end of season 1. However, there was another episode, and it was a holiday episode. I think it was mainly to be like a Christmas special. It goes more a little bit into their lore of like holidays. They don't celebrate Christmas, they celebrate Yuletide and like the winter solstice. During that time, Sabrina does a summoning to talk to her mom to find out why her mom's soul was lost in the void, and so she finds out that the reason why her mom was there was because she thought that Sabrina wasn't being treated well and loved and cared for. That was her unfinished business. So the second part is we're introduced to Grayla. She is the mother of lost children, and so she will take children that are lost, and it turns out she shows up to their house because the Yule log goes out thanks to Miss Wardwell, causing that to happen, which then causes these like the children of Grayla to show up, and they start messing around in the house. They have to call Grayla to come and gather her children and bring them home. And so while she's there, she hears the baby crying, and she's like, well, there's a baby here. It's my baby now. And so Diana shows up and is like, well, we'll find out who actually gets the baby. And they go to like tear the baby in half to see which one gets the baby, whatever. It tricks Grayla into thinking that she took the baby. She didn't. But Zelda's like, I can't keep her. She's like, I'm going to give her to Desmelda, who lives in the woods, to teach her the old ways. I can't keep her safe. I'm not going to take the risk. Whatever. So that's like the important lore pieces to know going into season 2 is that Zelda no longer has the baby. Sabrina knows why her mom had unfinished business. Also, in this episode, Susie gets kidnapped by a demon that tries to turn him into a wax figure. Rayla helps defeat him to get Susie back to safety because she hates anyone that harms children. That's pretty much all of that. That's everything. That was all of season 1 of Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, guaranteeing that this video is going to be a million years long. So this is part 1. So it's 4 seasons, so expect like 3 more videos of this. Not immediately. This video took me a long time to do, but I'm trying to get at least one like longer video essay out every month. Love making these, and you guys love watching them, so I have a lot of fun doing these types of videos. I love making little murder boards and stuff and doing this, and was very inspired by Carly's Riverdale series. Credit to her for doing this, but like it even goes back to Mike's Mike. I had a lot of fun doing this. I've been rewatching the show, and like I said, I really like the show. Please don't think that I'm hating on the show. I'm not at all. I just think Sabrina makes some of the most insane decisions, and the writing on the show is actually crazy. One will probably come out in a few months, I'm hoping, and I have another really long Marauders video coming out, so I'm hoping to get that out soon. I know I've been so bad about doing it, so I'm really sorry. There's more to come. This is like a super long video, so I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. If you're a fan of the show or not, I hope you had a fun time watching this video. Only gonna get more insane. So very excited for especially season 4, because my god, this show had so much potential and then just like very quickly went down the drain because the showrunner is the same showrunner from Riverdale, and that man does not understand character development if it smacked him in the fucking face. That's it for me on this one. I will see you guys hopefully very, very soon. All my social media links are down below, in addition to some other resources for you if you would like to check those out as well. Please take care of yourselves. Look after yourself. I know right now is a very scary time, but your mental health and your well-being is also very, very important, so please do not set that aside. I'm here for you guys, and I hope that you feel safe here, because that was the whole goal. I want this to be a very safe space for people to feel welcome, and that goes for queer people, people of color, women, etc., etc. Every marginalized community that can exist here. I hope you feel safe here. If you are a man that isn't a hateful piece of shit, you're also okay. You're on thin ice though, but you can stay here for now. Eye on you, bro. Do something nice for yourself today. Remember, you were loved especially by me, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.